Our team's pigs got sick with bad diarrhea. Granny Xiao called Uncle Zhao Jian to check on them, and he confirmed they were ill. I actually already knew how to treat them, but I didn't want to draw attention to myself. So, I told Zhao Jian to take the credit. He's a doctor who was sent down to our village during the political troubles. If he helped save the pigs, the village leaders would treat him better, and he could survive until things got better in the country. He understood right away and agreed. When the team leader's son Qingshu came, he was really worried. The local vet has a terrible reputation. People even nicknamed him Beast Death because every animal he treats ends up dying. So when Granny Xiao suggested Zhao Jian could help, the leaders had no choice but to let him try. Zhao Jian and I worked out a plan together. The pigs had diarrhea from a weak stomach, so we ground up some traditional herbs and mixed them into the pig feed. We also made filtered ash water for them to drink, since wood ash helps stop diarrhea. Granny Xiao helped us boil water, and we cleaned out the whole pig pen and spread ash around to kill germs. I stood by and watched the pigs while we waited. I could hear them chatting with each other. One pig said its stomach didn't hurt as much anymore, and another pig joked maybe that meant it was about to die. These pigs really have active imaginations. After about an hour, the pigs stopped having diarrhea. It worked. I was so relieved. I sent 2 kids to fetch the team leader. When he and the accountant came back, they were shaking with fear. Sure, all the pigs had died. The accountant sat on the ground crying before anyone could even explain. Zhao Jian tried to tell them the pigs were fine, but they kept cutting him off, already mourning their dead pigs. They wouldn't even look inside the pen. I just stood there watching the whole ridiculous scene, speechless. Granny Xiao finally lost her patience and shouted, "The pigs are fine. Stop crying." The accountant's son Yuelin scrambled to his feet, confused. He'd been wailing for nothing. When they walked into the pig pen and saw all the pigs strolling around happily, son Yuelin burst into tears of joy. His precious meat was safe. Then came the awkward part. Son Yuelin blamed Zhao Jian for not explaining clearly. Zhao Jian said he'd tried, but nobody let him talk. When Sun Yuelin asked why he shook his head, Zhao Jian said he was shaking his head to me. None died. Sun Yuelin realized he'd embarrassed himself pretty badly. Team leader Sun Qingshu was thrilled. Now they'd never have to call that useless vet from the commune again. He even planned to hold a meeting to praise Zhao Jian. I walked back with Sun Qingshu and asked if I could go to the commune tomorrow to check on a pearl shipment Ji Yanfeng had mailed out. He agreed right away. On the way, we ran into a woman struggling to carry firewood on her back. Sun Qingshu took the load from her and introduced us. She was my second aunt, Wang Lanhua. She seemed shy and a bit embarrassed that she had nothing to offer me. At her house, she gave us bowls of sugar water, which is considered the best hospitality in these times. It was incredibly sweet. She also gave me a handkerchief she'd embroidered with hibiscus flowers on light blue cotton. It was beautiful, and I told her so honestly. We didn't stay long. People would gossip about Sun Qingshu being at his younger brother's wife's house. When I asked about my second uncle, Sun Qingshu just said bitterly, "Some people alive are worse than dead." I didn't push it. He invited me for lunch, but it was already almost 1 o'clock, so I hurried home. The door was locked, and Ji Yanfeng wasn't home either. I grabbed some stuffed buns from my secret space, pepper pork, cabbage, and seaweed, and rushed up to the pig shed. When I got there, I found Ji Yanfeng inside the pig pen, whispering into one pig's ear, pinching another pig's nose. He'd been bothering them all through lunch. The poor pigs had just recovered from diarrhea, and now they were being mentally tortured. I could practically see the despair on their faces. The moment Yanfeng saw me, his eyes lit up like a puppy's. He jumped out of the pen, grabbed my hand, and started shaking it excitedly. I couldn't help thinking, you just touched the pigs and didn't even wash your hands. Outyan the clam chimed in too, scolding me for abandoning my husband and child to go have fun. I begged him to please learn how to use phrases correctly. Granny Xiao told me Yanfeng had gone home looking for me at noon, couldn't find me, came back, then wanted to go search again. She'd stopped him, so we wouldn't miss each other on the road. She'd fed him lunch, so he was fine. I gave her the buns I'd brought. I'd made them with my special spring water and vegetables from my space. Good for her health. She's a revolutionary elder and deserves it. She tried to refuse, but Yanfeng sweetly insisted she keep them. He told her, "You used to share with me when I had nothing. Now I have something to share back." She laughed, touched by his words. I checked the pigs one more time. They were all back to normal. My pig-raising knowledge actually worked. I even felt confident I could handle caring for mother pigs after birth now. Before leaving, I secretly added a few drops of spirit spring water to the pigs' drinking trough. They all rushed over and fought to drink every last drop. Smart pigs, they know the good stuff. I checked the pigs one more time. None of the sows were pregnant yet. I added a few drops of spirit spring water to their drinking trough, and they all rushed over to gulp it down. Feeling pretty proud of myself, I strolled off happily. Team leader Sun Qingshu kept his word and called all the squad leaders to the office for a meeting. While waiting for everyone to arrive, the squad leaders started having silent conversations with their eyes, trying to guess what was going on. What happened next was absolutely ridiculous. Through a chain of misread eye signals, the message got completely twisted. It started as Sun Yuelin seemed sick and was shaking, then turned into the team leader beat Sun Yuelin and broke his legs, and finally became Sun Yuelin had some kind of seizure and died. The 10th squad leader, Sun Yueshan, happened to be Sun Yuelin's younger brother. When he understood that his brother had died, he burst into tears and started yelling at the team leader for being heartless and already trying to replace his brother. Sun Qingshu was completely confused. Sun Yuelin had actually just gone to the outhouse because of constipation. Right at that moment, Sun Yuelin himself wobbled through the door on numb legs from squatting too long. He was very confused to hear that he was supposedly dead. The brothers had a loud reunion. After the whole comedy ended, Sun Qingshu told the squad leaders about how Zhao Jian saved the pigs and told everyone to treat him well. The squad leaders spread the word, and all the village aunties were thrilled. The commune's official vet was terrible. He killed more animals than he saved, but nobody could complain because his brother-in-law was a powerful official. Now, they had their own vet. The aunties declared that anyone who mistreated Zhao Jian was a public enemy of the village. Without knowing it, Zhao Jian became the most protected person in our village from that day on, kept safe even through the worst of the political troubles. The next morning, I got up early and headed to the commune to set up a cover story for the Pearl Money. After wandering around aimlessly, I spotted some suspicious-looking people sneaking into an alley, probably heading to the black market. I had no interest in that. I had everything I needed in my secret space, so why take the risk? Instead, I treated myself to the state-run restaurant. They had mackerel dumplings. In my past life, a co-worker from the Shandong coast had shared some with me, and they were incredible. I ordered a plate for myself plus a sea vegetable soup and packed another order of dumplings and braised pork to bring home for Yanfeng. When the dumplings came, I took a bite and couldn't help making a happy sound. They were so fresh and juicy, absolutely delicious. Someone burst out laughing. I looked up, and it was that same guy who'd given me a colorful bracelet last time. The guy from last time, the one who gave me that bracelet that hurt my wrist, was sitting in the state-run restaurant. He was tall with big eyes and a square jaw, honestly pretty handsome, but I was still annoyed about my wrist taking days to heal even with spirit spring water. His name was Jiang Qinggong. He apologized, and I forgave him just to get him to stop making a scene. But then he sat across from me and started eyeing my dumplings. I pulled my plate closer and watched him suspiciously. He swore he wasn't going to steal my food, he'd ordered his own. Then his partner showed up, Mu Qianhan, the other guy from before. He was actually quite handsome too, with sharp features and a strong nose. But still, nobody's better looking than my little fool Yanfeng. Mu Qianhan tried to bow and apologize formally, but I grabbed him and pushed him onto a seat before he could. People were already staring at us like we were animals at the zoo. I noticed his ears turned completely red. Jiang Qinggong was shocked. Apparently his team leader never smiles or gets embarrassed. Jiang Qinggong told me they'd used the lead from catching those human traffickers to bust a huge trafficking ring. The woman I helped, Xiang Wanling, turned out to have a very powerful family, and their help made the whole operation go smoothly. Mu Qianhan said they'd told her about me, and she wanted to find me. I told them not to bother. If she truly wanted to find me, she'd ask again on her own. No need to remind people of favors. Mu Qianhan kept sneaking looks at me. I didn't notice at the time, but apparently he was smitten. Then Jiang Qinggong got excited and suggested we all become sworn siblings. Both Mu Qianhan and I immediately said no. Mu Qianhan didn't want me becoming his sister, and I definitely didn't need two random brothers from a trip to the commune. Poor Jiang Qinggong looked hurt, but neither of us budged. As we stepped outside, we saw some young Red Guards dragging a group of people down the street, ragged, starving, hollow-eyed, tied together with rope. Everyone on the street hurried away, afraid of getting involved. We stood at the restaurant door, unable to look away until they passed. Jiang Qinggong clenched his fists and cursed the times. I looked up at the hazy sky and thought about how even though the worst of the political movement wasn't supposed to start until next year, things were clearly already getting bad. I hoped the darkness would pass soon. At the meeting point, Grandpa Dellin was already waiting with the ox cart. I gave him 2 buns, and he gave me 2 warm eggs his son had just given him. His son works as a secretary at the commune office. My aunt-in-law had told me Grandpa Dellin is straightforward and genuine. If he wants to be friendly with you, he won't play coy about giving and receiving. As I headed home, I realized the month was almost over. Time to find Yifan. The ox cart ride back was so bumpy, I almost fell asleep. When I got to the village entrance, nobody was around. Usually there'd be aunties chatting and weaving fishing nets under the big banyan tree. Grandpa Dellin lit his pipe and said some people had been sent down for reform, so everyone was probably at the grain-drying yard. I remembered the people I'd seen tied up in town earlier, and my heart sank. When I passed the drying yard, the crowd was just breaking up. The Red Guards had already left. Team leader Sun Qingshu had someone untie the ropes and told the village leaders to send some strong workers to build 2 rooms near the cow shed with heated beds. Winter was coming, and they couldn't let people freeze to death. Our village is decent like that. At least they don't drag people out for public shaming every few days. Sun Qingshu sent them to squeeze in at the pig shed for now, and the accountant's son Yuelin quietly grabbed some grain bags from the storehouse, saying, "They're here to be reformed. Can't reform them if they starve." The other village officials all pretended not to see the grain. They looked at the sky, looked at the ground, looked anywhere but at those bags. On my way home, I ran into the educated youth, Jianghua, Zhou Hongjun, and Chunlu. Chunlu's face was tanned from a month of fieldwork. She commented on how carefree I seemed, going to town whenever I wanted. Then it hit me. Those suspicious figures I'd seen sneaking toward the black market in town looked like Zhou Hongjun and Jianghua. Those 2 had some nerve. But I picked a foxtail grass, stuck it in my mouth, and thought, everyone's free to do what they want, as long as they don't drag me into it. Back home, I went into my secret space right away. It had set me in alert while I was talking to Chinlu. An animal in the free-range mountain area had awakened its intelligence, and the space asked if I wanted to kill it. I went in and found a little wild piglet floating in midair, spread out like a starfish, screaming for help. I could actually understand it. It was the same little pig that had been spying on me before. Turns out it had been eating grass near the edge of my spiritual energy barrier every single day. Each blade only had a tiny bit of spiritual energy, but this little guy's whole life was eat, sleep, poop, repeat, and through sheer volume, it actually gained intelligence. If it were human, that kind of dedication would take it far in life. I examined it. Nothing special, same small size as before, but with beautifully shiny fur. Its little bean eyes showed fear, pleading, and panic so expressively that I thought it could be an actor pig in the modern world. The space said I could keep it by placing a contract on it. It would keep its mind, move freely, and have its own thoughts, but would have to obey my commands. Since it wasn't a threat, I decided to let it live. No point killing something that worked so hard to gain awareness. I tested the contract by telling it to bark like a dog. The poor thing had no choice. It went oink.
Oink. Woof.
Woof, woof, woof. You're bullying a pig. I nearly died laughing. It had even named itself Batian, meaning dominator. It declared proudly, "I'm a very impressive pig." I loved it. Batian wanted to keep living in its own little den, which was fine by me. I set up protection so no other animals could hurt it or enter its territory, left it some spirit spring water and vegetables, and petted it for a while before leaving. The moment I walked away, Batian zoomed over to the water, gulped it all down, then happily munched its dinner thinking, having an owner is great. No more scrounging for scraps. Batian loves its owner. Meanwhile, back at the village, the accountant was handing grain to the newly arrived couple sent down for reform, telling them our team leader isn't the harsh type. Just behave and they'd be fine. The poor people just stood there, exhausted after nearly a month of hardship. The newly arrived couple settled into the grass shed next to the pig pen. I could hear bits of their conversation later. One of them, Zhang, felt relieved just hearing the pigs grunting nearby. Her husband Jiang said our village seemed like a good place. Another couple, Zhou Aigua and Lu Lan, recognized that Zhao Jian and Commander Lin were already here, which was reassuring. Lu Lan cried because she'd spotted her son Zhou Hongjun in the village. He'd been sent down as an educated youth, his future ruined because of them. Granny Xiao brought them a bundle of clothes without being asked. She'd noticed the women's clothes were torn. She just handed over the bundle and left without fanfare. That's the kind of person she is. When I got to the beach, only a few kids were there collecting seafood, including Yanfeng and Outyen. With Outyen guiding him and the water-repelling Pearl helping, Yanfeng had caught loads of sea cucumbers, octopus, and big crabs. The wind the night before had washed up sea worms and oysters too. I was like a mouse that fell into an oil vat. I couldn't stop grabbing things. I even snuck some into my secret space. When I couldn't fit any more without being suspicious, we headed home happily. I decided on seafood dumplings for dinner. 3 kinds of filling with sea cucumber, octopus, and seaworm mixed with chives. Yanfeng's knife skills turned out to be incredible. Everything was cut neat and even. When I showed him how to roll dumpling wrappers, something clicked in him. He took the rolling pin, and some buried memory surfaced. His long, pale fingers moved gracefully, one hand rolling, the other turning the dough, and out came a perfect circle. I praised him enthusiastically. With kids, encouragement makes them confident and willing to work. He kept pushing himself. First 3 wrappers at once, then 6 at once, each time looking at me and Outyen with bright expectant eyes, waiting for praise. We obliged every time. His rolling was so fast that I finished wrapping all the dumplings in no time. I set aside 30 dumplings in a basket for Yanfeng to deliver to Uncle's son Qingshu's house, then cooked the rest and waited for him. While he was gone, Outyen and I had a serious talk. Outyen told me he'd noticed Yanfeng's body was improving from the spirit spring water. Then he revealed something important. He's a medicine clam, one of only 2 left in the world. When I got excited and eyed him a little too eagerly, he clutched his shell in terror and yelled, "Don't look at me like that. I'd rather die than submit." I couldn't help laughing. Then, Outyen got serious. He told me Yanfeng had been poisoned with multiple toxins. His organs and brain were all damaged. If his original body hadn't been strong, he'd have died long ago. Without help, he wouldn't have much time left. Outyen had been secretly feeding Yanfeng bits of his own flesh, which would heal his body eventually. But there was a problem. Something was lodged in Yanfeng's brain, fused with it now. His body could recover, but his mind might not. I was deeply moved. Outyen was literally giving pieces of himself to save this boy. Since he'd shared his biggest secret with me, I decided to share mine too. I held out my hand, and a storage bag for my space appeared. I gave Outyen a storage bag filled with spirit spring water and fruits and vegetables, telling him to come to me for more when it ran out. I added, "Don't let Yanfeng get better while you waste away." Outyen spat dramatically and said he'd pretend he didn't hear that last part. He'd been secretly cutting pieces of his own flesh to feed Yanfeng every 7 days. That's the most Yanfeng's body could handle. Even though the spirit spring water helped his flesh grow back, it still hurt. He muttered that if Yanfeng wasn't good to him, he'd bite him to death. Yanfeng came home looking upset, his lip pouting enough to hang a bottle from it. I coaxed him by calling him our smart, capable, and obedient Yanfeng, and asked who'd made him angry. His frown instantly flipped into a smile. Yen marveled at how well I had him wrapped around my finger. Then Feng acted out the whole scene for me, complete with hand gestures. He'd gone to deliver the dumplings to Grandpa's son Qingshu's house, but only the two daughters-in-law were home. The second wife, Yu, was perfectly nice. She gave him water and some wild fruit, then went about her business. But the first wife, Lu Mei, had her eye on the dumplings. She kept trying to get Feng to leave them with her, so she could give some to her own family. Feng refused. He said I told him to give them to Grandpa and Grandma personally. Lu Mei got more and more frustrated. When Feng innocently asked if she wanted to eat some, because he'd noticed her swallowing her saliva, she snapped. She slammed the table and screamed, "You idiot! Can't you understand human speech?" That word, idiot, triggered something in Feng. Bad memories flooded in, of his aunt and cousins calling him the same thing. Luckily, Grandma Chen Guixiang arrived right at that moment and shouted Lu Mei down. The whole family had actually walked in and heard everything. Lu Mei tried to lie her way out, claiming she'd just been worried Feng would miss dinner. But they'd heard it all clearly. Grandma Chen was furious. She'd been against this marriage from the start because Lu Mei's family was known for being selfish. She ordered Lu Mei to apologize. The eldest son, Sun Jianmin, was so ashamed his face turned red. He bowed and apologized on his wife's behalf. Feng just hid behind Grandpa and said quietly, "I'm not an idiot." Grandpa's son told his son to have Lu Mei bring out 5 yuan as an apology. Lu Mei exploded, screaming, throwing herself on the ground, wailing that she'd been hit and given him a son, and this was her thanks. Then her own little boy, Kong Kong, walked in holding Feng's hand and innocently said, "Dad, Mom gave all the money to Uncle." Lu Mei scrambled to cover his mouth. Sun Jianmin went silent and dragged Lu Mei into their room. Shouting and screaming followed. Grandpa's son's hands were shaking so badly he could barely light his pipe. Grandma Chun went and got 10 yuan of their own money, 5 as a gift from Grandpa, 5 as the apology from the daughter-in-law. But Feng refused to take any of it. He said, "I really can't take this, Grandma. The dumplings are on the table. I'm going home now." And he ran off. Grandpa's son sighed heavily and said, "What sins we must have committed." Grandma Chen, looking grim, took Kong Kong to the kitchen and told the second daughter-in-law to cook dinner and boil all the dumplings. When Feng finished telling me everything, my heart ached for him. What a good kid with such a hard life. After Feng told me what happened at Grandpa's son's house, my fists clenched with anger. Yen was yelling about going back to get revenge. I held him back. I wanted to see how Sun Qingshu would handle it first. That would tell me how to deal with these people going forward. Feng sat on my lap, buried his face in my neck, and asked quietly, "Am I really that unlikable?" Yen exploded. "Nonsense. Don't listen to those people." I stroked Feng's head and told him he was just sick right now, and once he got better, he'd be a perfectly healthy boy. The people who bullied him were just jealous because they couldn't compare to him. Then he told me about his uncle's family, and it broke my heart. When he first went to live with his uncle told everyone they were family and should love each other. Feng was so happy he finally had a family, but his uncle was always busy and away from home. When his uncle was around, his aunt fed him. When his uncle was gone, she didn't. His older cousin beat him whenever he was in a bad mood. His younger cousin pinched him and jabbed his fingers with sewing needles. His aunt told him if he ever complained to his uncle, it meant he was destroying family harmony. After all, why would they only hit him unless he deserved it? So he tried harder. He did all the chores, tried to be obedient, and stopped eating to avoid being a burden. When he got hungry, he just drank water. One day his aunt beat him with a thick vine branch because he hadn't done the laundry. He curled up on the ground, protecting his head, silently counting the lashes. She usually got tired after 45 to 50 hits. But at lash 23, his uncle came home. His uncle pushed her away, peeled back Feng's clothes, saw the marks and broke down sobbing. Feng couldn't understand. He was the one who got beaten, so why was his uncle crying? My heart felt like it was being squeezed. I swore that if I ever met those 3 people, I'd make sure Feng got his revenge. Yen burst into loud, ugly tears. As his tears fell, they hardened into tiny milky white pearls. He waved his hand and turned them into a simple white cord, which he gave to Yanfeng. Wear this, it'll keep you safe in the sea. I hung it around Yanfeng's neck and told him to come eat. Everything bad is in the past now. From now on, I'll protect you. Outyan bounced up and down shouting, Me too. Me too. Yanfeng looked so happy. We sat down to eat the dumplings, which I'd kept fresh in my space. Outyan tried cooked food for the first time. He carefully bit into one dumpling and was completely won over, though it was so big it stuffed him full. He lay flat on the table watching us eat the rest. Yanfeng said my seafood dumplings were even better than the mackerel ones from the restaurant. I said, of course, look who made them. He grinned and said he helped too. Outyan declared, from now on, the three of us are family. We live well together and let the jealous people choke on it. Yanfeng's eyes went red. He nodded hard and said, yes, the three of us. I have a family now. Meanwhile, the drama at Grandpa Sun's house was still going. Sun Jianmin had always known his wife Lu Mei helped her parents' family with money, and he'd turned a blind eye. But today he discovered she'd given away all their savings for her nephew's wedding. Every single yuan. Lu Mei stood in the yard, hands on her hips, insisting her brother promised to pay it all back double after collecting the bride price. He'd even buy Sun Jianmin a bicycle. The second daughter-in-law you listen from the side, thinking a bicycle? Maybe a drawing of one. I heard later what happened after Yanfeng left Grandpa Sun's house, and honestly, it was like watching a drama unfold. Sun Jianmin confronted Lu Mei about the money. It turned out she'd given her family 170 yuan, all of their savings, to help her nephew's wedding. Lu Mei insisted her nephew was going to be a factory worker soon, and would be so grateful he'd treat her like a second mother. The second daughter-in-law you couldn't help but mock her. Your mom's feeding you fairy tales and washing them down with water so you don't choke. Grandma Chen pointed out the obvious. Why would a nephew take care of his aunt when his own parents were alive? Lu Mei didn't see the problem. She even tried blaming everything on little Kong Kong for speaking up. But Kong Kong, hiding behind Grandpa Sun's coat, cried out the truth. Every time Grandma gave him treats, his mom took them to her parents' house. Even the return gift his dad had prepared for me, marbles for Kong Kong. Lu Mei had sent those to her family too. That's when I understood why I'd never gotten a return gift from the eldest son's family. It wasn't that they didn't care. Lu Mei had been intercepting everything. Sun Jianmin went cold. He gave Lu Mei two choices: go home and bring back the money, or get her family to write an IOU. If she came back empty-handed, they were getting divorced. Lu Mei was actually confident. She bragged that her brother had even offered to write an IOU before, and she'd been too generous to accept. She demanded that when she came back with the note, Sun Jianmin had to kneel and apologize. He agreed if she brought it back. She marched off triumphantly toward her parents' house. After she left, Grandma Chen asked Sun Jianmin if he was serious about divorce or just angry. He said flatly, don't worry. She won't bring anything back. He already knew what kind of family they were. Grandpa Sun stood up, patted his shoulder, and said, you're a grown man. Just make sure you won't regret your decision. He also told Sun Jianmin they'd come visit Yanfeng together tomorrow to apologize properly. The second brother, Sun Jianshi, tried to comfort his older brother by saying, my condolences, like someone had died. His wife twisted his ear and dragged him inside before he could make things worse. Left alone, Sun Jianmin held his son Kong Kong, who asked tearfully, is it my fault you're getting divorced? Sun Jianmin looked him in the eye and said, son, this has nothing to do with you. I think you're brave and honest. Never take the blame for other people's mistakes. Kong Kong didn't understand all the words, but he heard his dad say he was brave, and that was enough. Sun Jianmin bounced his boy in his arms. The child was too thin. He realized Lu Mei had been taking food and money meant for their own family and sending it all to her parents. She could have just talked to him about helping her family. But stealing the return gifts meant for me? That made the whole family look bad. And worse, she'd been neglecting their own child to feed her nephew. Meanwhile, Lu Mei arrived at her parents' house calling out cheerfully. Her mother hobbled out with a big smile, asking, my darling daughter, What goodies did you bring me today? I found out later what happened when Lu Mei went back to her parents' house, and it was worse than anyone imagined. When Lu Mei arrived empty-handed, her motherly pose enthusiasm dropped immediately. Lu Mei asked her brother Lu Guangyao to write the IOU, as he'd once offered. But the moment she brought it up, everything changed. Her mother started screaming that the money was a wedding gift for the nephew, not a loan. Her brother, who'd been hiding behind their mother, came out and played along. Sister, how could you go back on your word? Lu Mei was stunned. They'd clearly told her it was a loan that would be repaid after the wedding. When village neighbors gathered at the gate to watch, her mother saw an opportunity. She threw herself on the ground, slapping her thighs, wailing about raising an ungrateful daughter. Her brother slapped Lu Mei across the face for upsetting their mother. Lu Mei stood there in shock, holding her cheek, tears streaming down. She begged. She didn't even want the money back, just a simple IOU. Without it, her husband would divorce her. The crowd initially sided with the mother, scolding Lu Mei for trying to take back a wedding gift. But when Lu Mei cried out that it was 170 yuan, her entire family's savings, the crowd went silent for a moment, then turned on the mother. People started saying Lu Mei was foolish for giving everything to her blood-sucking mother and useless brother. Then things got truly ugly. Lu Mei's brother pulled their mother aside and whispered that Lu Mei should get divorced. His nephew's boss had a 30-year-old son who was willing to pay 500 yuan in bride price. The brother wanted to essentially sell his sister off again for a second round of wedding money. The mother's eyes lit up. She switched from calling Lu Mei, my darling daughter, to money-losing goods, which is apparently what she'd always called her before Lu Mei started bringing home gifts after marriage. She grabbed Lu Mei and announced, "Divorce. You must divorce. Mama will sell you for find you a good home." Lu Mei finally saw her family for what they were. Even with her rose-tinted view of her brother, she could tell he was scheming to trade her for profit. Terrified they'd trap her, she scrambled to her feet and bolted for the door. Her brother lunged to grab her, but missed. Years of laziness had made him slower than his sister. She burst out of the yard, and the villagers who'd been about to leave stopped to watch the show. I heard the full story of what happened next, and honestly, it was like something out of a movie. Lu Mei stood in the crowd outside her parents' yard, shaking, and shouted that her mother and brother were trying to sell her off. The villagers erupted. Everyone started talking about how the Sun family had always treated Lu Mei well, a kind mother-in-law, no scheming sister-in-law, a husband who adored her, and she'd thrown it all away for a family that saw her as nothing but a money source.
Liu Mei was drowning in regret.
All the kindness she'd ignored came flooding back like needles in her heart. Her brother grabbed her and slapped her again, trying to drag her back inside. She reached out to a villager for help, but her brother threatened anyone who interfered. He was known for sneaking rat poison into people's homes when crossed. Nobody dared step in.
Liu Mei was in despair.
Then Sun Jiamin walked through the crowd with a group of tough young men behind him. Lu Mei's regret hit her like a tidal wave all over again. This was the husband she'd been betraying all along. Lu Guangyao dropped her arm instantly. Before marriage, Sun Jiamin had been a notorious tough guy. Beating Guangyao was as easy as swatting a chicken. He'd only calmed down after getting married, which is exactly when Guangyao started mooching off him. Lu Mei threw herself at Sun Jiamin's feet, crying and swearing she'd change, calling lightning down on herself if she lied. He looked down at the handprint on her face, his eyes dark as a whirlpool. She trembled. She'd never seen him look like that. He said coldly, "Remember what you said." Then he turned to her brother. "So you're the one who slapped my wife's face." He called over one of his boys, Han Xing, who was thrilled to be activated again after years. Han Xing swaggered up and slapped Lu Guangyao 10 times across the face. Lipa screamed about her precious son being hit, then actually demanded that Sun Jiamin hit her too, daring him and saying people would judge him. Sun Jiamin sighed and said, "This is the first time anyone's made such a request. Since you insist, I'll generously oblige." Han Xing slapped her 10 times too. He rubbed his hands afterward and complained, "Brother, this old lady's skin is so thick it hurts my hands." Lu Guangyao curled up on the ground trying to be invisible, hiding behind his mother as a shield. Once things calmed down, Sun Jiamin squatted in front of Li Pe and said he didn't want the 170 yuan back. Before she could celebrate, he dropped the real demand. Write a formal document cutting all family ties with Lu Mei, notarized at the commune. Li Pe immediately tried to negotiate. Give me 500, no, 1,000 yuan and I'll sign. Sun Jiamin flicked his cigarette ash calmly. You sure about that? I found out later how Sun Jiamin wrapped things up at Lu Mei's parents' house. When Li Pe demanded 1,000 yuan for the family separation document, Sun Jiamin just flicked his cigarette ash and gave his boys a look. They charged into the house and started tossing things around, smashing the water jug. Li Pe watched helplessly as her home was torn apart. Within minutes, she caved.
Fine.
I agree. The whole thing took Sun Jiamin less than 20 minutes. The village leader happened to show up and got the accountant to write up 3 copies of the family separation document right there. He even sent the accountant on a tractor to the commune office to get it officially stamped.
No dilas.
Lu Mei held her copy with shaking hands. It was the end of her toxic family, but also a fresh start. Sun Jiamin glanced at her and said, I did this for Kong Kong's sake. If you ever reconnect with them, don't blame me for what happens next. She nodded. She finally saw clearly how good her in-laws and sister-in-law had always been to her. I didn't know about any of this at the time. After Yanfeng and Out Yan went home, I pulled out my green communication stone to contact Yifan. The code phrases he'd set up were ridiculous. Mine was, zebra, zebra, don't fall asleep, and his was zebra, zebra, go to sleep. Every time I used them, I couldn't help wondering, are we letting the zebra sleep or not? We arranged to do the spirit money transfer at the beach at midnight. I set my alarm for 11, went to sleep, then got up and rode my electric bike to the shore under the bright moonlight. What I didn't know was that after Yanfeng fell asleep, something strange happened. His eyes snapped open, but they weren't his usual innocent eyes. They were sharp and cold, like an unsheathed sword. He got dressed silently, checked on the snoring Out Yan, and disappeared into the night with a few leaps. At the beach, I found a big rock for cover and started burning the spirit offerings for Yifan, gold mountains, silver mountains, paper mansions, paper phones, money trees, spirit currency. While burning everything, I kept feeling like someone was watching me. I spun around several times but saw nobody. I figured I was just tired and imagining things. After finishing, I contacted Yifan to confirm he received everything. No response. I called again. Nothing. And again. Still silence. I was about to send yet another. Zebra, zebra, don't fall asleep, when suddenly an irritated young man's voice cut through the night air. Enough with the zebra already. You've been going on about zebras all night. It's the middle of the night. Why won't you let the zebra sleep? What do you want? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Every hair on my body stood up. I quietly grabbed a wooden club from my space, crept forward a few steps, and slowly turned toward where the voice came from. I looked everywhere, but couldn't find anyone. I yelled into the darkness. Who's out there playing tricks? Show yourself. Nothing but waves. I muttered. What? Is it a ghost? Then a voice exploded right next to my ear. Hey, why aren't you answering me? My hand moved faster than my brain. I swung the club behind me and smack hit something.
Ow.
Su Yuyu, what are you doing? It was Yifan, clutching his head.
Ide waka República del Yemen fan.
I apologized, explaining I thought he was a ghost. Then someone laughed and called us both idiots. I snapped, who's pretending to be a ghost in front of an actual ghost? Yifan waved his hand and a figure appeared, nearly 6 feet tall, wearing a tattered, blood-soaked military uniform, with bright, mischievous eyes. My breath caught. This was the soul of a fallen soldier. Yifan introduced us.
His name was Xiao Tan.
He'd been watching over things tonight. He'd noticed Yanfeng acting strange and tried to follow him, but couldn't go far due to some kind of restriction. Then he saw me riding my grass-free donkey, my electric bike, to the beach and got curious. He'd stayed to guard me while I burned the spirit money, worried the wealth might attract other ghosts. But my endless zebra chanting drove him crazy.
Ye fan kafuda kartli.
Apparently, he'd used some special privileges to make sure his gold and silver were properly received, which caused the communication delay.
He wasn't about to admit that, though.
Xiao Ten told me a story. He died at 25 fighting the Japanese invaders. He had enough merit to enter the cycle of reincarnation, but he refused. He'd promised his beloved he'd come back and marry her again in the next life. Since he broke that promise by dying, he traded his merit to stay by her side as a ghost until she passed, and secured a bond so they'd be husband and wife again in their next lives. I cried so hard. Those horrible invaders. Yi Fan rolled his eyes at me sobbing, but I didn't care. I grabbed his sleeve and wiped my face on it. Before leaving to visit his Yuwu, his beloved, Xiao Tan waved goodbye casually. Yi Fan then gave me a gift. Spirit sight. From now on, I could see any ghost, marked by a green glow above their head. I looked at Yi Fan. Sure enough, green on top. I thought, to make life interesting, you've got to wear a little green on your head. Classic. He told me Xiao Tan was a true hero with great merit, and if he ever needed my help I should give it would benefit me too. When I asked who Xiao Tan's beloved was, Yi Fan just said, "Watch carefully and you'll figure it out." Then he rushed off to count his new spirit money fortune. Apparently he was about to propose to someone and needed to calculate his bride price. I dragged myself home exhausted and collapsed into bed. The next morning, Outyin burst into my house in a panic. Yanfeng had woken up soaking wet, lying in the courtyard with no memory of how he got there. He was dizzy, aching all over, and burning with fever, hot enough to fry an egg on his forehead. Then he'd passed out cold on the bed. Outyin had slapped his little arms against Yanfeng's face as hard as he could, but got zero response. I rushed over, felt his forehead, and pulled out spirit spring water. Outyin perched on Yanfeng's chest and held the cup while I propped him up to drink. The spirit spring water helped right away. Yanfeng's color improved visibly. Outyin muttered about how his clothes were soaking wet, wondering if he'd gone swimming in the sea. I decided to get Zhao Jian to check on him just in case. Sick Yanfeng was incredibly docile. When I touched his head, he nuzzled into my hand like a little cat. I told Outyin to watch him and hide if anyone came to the door, then rushed to the pig shed. The kids there were so sweet. Little Huzi and Arya asked where Yanfeng was, and when I told them he was sick, Huzi patted his little chest and insisted on doing Yanfeng's share of the pig grass work without any reward. He said Yanfeng was their buddy who always shared treats with them. Of course they'd cover for him. What adorable kids. Meanwhile, something was happening inside Yanfeng's mind. He'd entered some kind of endless starlit space, wandering around lost and scared, calling for me and Outyin. Then he heard footsteps, looked up hoping it was me, and saw someone he recognized.
"It's you," he said. "I didn't know any of this at the time."
Granny Xiao was cautious about sending Zhao Jian over because the newly arrived people hadn't been vetted yet. She whispered to him quietly and sent him along. Back home, Yanfeng was getting worse. Pale, drenched in sweat, mumbling deliriously. Outyin jumped onto his forehead to examine him and said his brain seemed to have gone into some kind of self-protection mode. Not ideal, but not immediately dangerous. I asked if 50-year-old ginseng from my space would help. Outyin said to try it since his own medicine, his flesh, had just been given yesterday and couldn't be used again so soon. I went into my space, pulled up 5 large ginseng roots, extracted 10 drops of concentrated essence into a jade bottle, and came back out. Then Zhao Jian arrived. He checked Yanfeng's pulse and said it was just wind cold entering the body. A few doses of medicine would fix it. But I could tell he was shocked at how much Yanfeng's overall health had improved since the last checkup. He knew Yanfeng must have had some lucky encounter, but didn't pry. He also found some fresh scrapes on Yanfeng's body, but nothing serious. He wrote a prescription and told me to apply cold compresses and come find him if the medicine didn't work. Once he left, I went into my space and used my Pinduoduo app to order all the herbs and have them processed into liquid medicine. It arrived in my storage instantly. When I came back out, Outyin scolded me for disappearing into my space without warning him. I laughed, picked him up, and tossed him in the air like a baby. He complained, but I could tell he loved it. We propped Yanfeng up and added 5 drops of ginseng essence to the herbal medicine. Out Yen held the bowl while I pried open Yanfeng's mouth, and we poured it down. He was so heavy to hold up. From somewhere unseen, a voice sighed. How enviable. When Yanfeng woke up, Out Yen and I were both watching him. He looked at me with red, helpless eyes and croaked, "Auntie," before bursting into tears and throwing himself into my arms. The impact knocked me flat on the bed, with his upper body pinning me down. I nearly lost my breath, but forced myself to pat his back and comfort him while he sobbed. Out Yen peeked at us, laughed, then strolled back into the wardrobe and shut the door. "Exhausting day," he muttered. Something flickered in Yanfeng's eyes, a flash of darkness that vanished as quickly as it came. And somewhere in his mind another voice said, "Not bad, this feeling. I didn't know about any of that." After he cried himself back to sleep, I went home to make porridge. In my space, I looked at the packaged pork, then at the live pigs grunting nearby, and decided fresh was better. I picked a nice-looking pig and ended its life before it even knew what happened. I selected a piece of tenderloin and left happily. Little Batian, my wild piglet, had been spying from behind a bush and was so terrified he almost pooped himself. I had no time for his dramatics. I made lean pork and vegetable porridge with spirit spring water and added 2 drops of ginseng essence. Just as I stepped outside carrying the pot, I saw Grandma Chen approaching my house with Sun Jiamin and Lu Mei. Grandma Chen looked worried. Sun Jiamin was stone-faced, carrying a basket. Lu Mei trailed behind with swollen red eyes. I greeted them warmly, same as always. Grandma Chen relaxed a little seeing my normal attitude. When I mentioned Yanfeng was sick, she immediately wanted to see him, then shot Lu Mei a fierce glare. She was convinced Lu Mei's behavior yesterday had caused his illness. At Yanfeng's house, he lit up the moment he saw me. He called out, "Auntie," so loudly and happily, like a puppy waiting for its owner. Grandma Chen fussed over him, saying his face had gotten thinner. I had to hide my smile. He'd been sick for 1 night, not a month. It's that classic thing where mothers think you've lost weight no matter what. Sun Jianmin apologized on behalf of himself and Lu Mei. Then Lu Mei stepped forward, hands clenched nervously, and said she was sorry for how she'd acted, not just yesterday, but in general. She asked us not to hold it against her. I stayed quiet and let Yanfeng decide. He glanced at Grandma Chen holding his hand and made his choice. He told Lu Mei he wasn't angry, but she had to promise never to call him an idiot again. She agreed immediately, looking relieved it was that simple. "Then we're good," Yanfeng said. Then he added privately to himself, a thought I caught later, that as long as she stopped calling him names, he'd stop secretly putting laxatives in her water bottle. I nearly choked when I found that out. This kid was not as innocent as he looked. Sun Jiamin left a basket of gifts. When I tried to refuse, he said, "If you don't accept it, that means you haven't forgiven us. Besides, you've fed our family plenty. Just take it." So I did. I accepted the gifts without fuss. When I opened the bundle, there was some really nice stuff. 2 jars of malted milk powder, a bag of brown sugar, 2 bottles of canned fruit, and 2 pieces of cured meat. For me, these weren't a big deal, but for most people in this era, they were treasures. The family really put thought into it. I stored everything in Yanfeng's cabinet for when he got hungry. Speaking of which, he was staring at me with those big sparkly eyes, hands on his empty stomach. "Auntie, I'm hungry." I smacked my forehead. I'd completely forgotten the porridge. He ate it happily, looking like the most satisfied person in the world. Once he had some energy, I questioned him about the night before. He dodged my eyes and mumbled something about nightmares and sleepwalking. I let it go. I'd actually seen sleepwalkers in my past life, so it wasn't impossible. Then little Huzi, an area, came to visit. Yanfeng was so excited he tried to jump off the bed, but I glared him back down. The kids brought wild fruits they'd picked on the mountain, and the 3 of them sat together chatting and crunching away. Watching them, I felt so proud of my well-mannered boy, then realized he's actually a 20-something adult who's older than me. Details. I brought over snacks, candy, sunflower seeds, and some milk tea I'd made, letting Yanfeng play host. When the kids left, I packed little bags of treats for them. They refused repeatedly, so polite it was actually exhausting trying to give them gifts. I finally convinced them by saying it was Yanfeng's thank you present for visiting. After they left, Yanfeng deflated. I gave him his herbal medicine, and he fell asleep quickly. I told Outyen to watch him. Outyen poked Yanfeng's cheek and concluded, "This family can't function without me." That evening, I packed up some white flour, cornmeal, cured meat, and eggs to bring to the pig shed and update the elders on Yanfeng's condition. As I walked along the dark path, I heard rustling sounds ahead. I immediately ducked into my space. Then I discovered something amazing. I could see the outside world from inside my space. The sky above me turned into a screen showing everything around my body. Even better, I could move forward while staying inside. This was incredible, perfect for sneaking around. As I tested this new ability, I spotted Zhou Hongjun and Jiangguo on the path, both carrying large baskets. They were clearly up to something suspicious at night. They moved without making a sound, definitely trained fighters. Jiangguo said the noise they'd heard was probably just a small animal. Zhou Hongjun scanned the area with sharp eyes, confirmed it was clear, and they moved on. I patted my chest in relief. Thanks to the spirit spring water sharpening my senses, I'd heard them first and hidden in time. Just as I was about to come out of my space, I suddenly found myself looking directly into Zhou Hongjun's eyes. They doubled back. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Then I realized he couldn't actually see me inside my space. I shifted my gaze to Jiangguo and waited, trying to calm my pounding heart. That was way too close. I waited in my space until Zhou Hongjun and Jiangguo moved on. Zhou Hongjun kept looking back. He could sense something, but couldn't find me. I stuck my tongue out at him from inside my space. "Can't catch me." I followed them all the way to the pig shed area. They went to the newly built rooms next to the cow shed and knocked quietly. A head peeked out, checked both directions, and they slipped inside. So that's what their special identities meant. They weren't secret agents or anything exciting. They just had family members who'd been sent down for reform. No need to eavesdrop on a family reunion. Walking away, I felt a pang of loneliness. At least they had family. In both my lives, I'd been alone. Well, except for my brother Suyunchi, whose fate was never mentioned later in the original story. I really hoped he was alive somewhere. What I didn't know was that at that very moment, my brother was trapped in a mountain hollow, surrounded by people hunting him. He hadn't eaten in days and was too afraid to catch the rabbits and pheasants around him for fear of being spotted. He was contemplating whether he'd be the first person in history to starve to death surrounded by food. Then, bonk, something hit his head. Then bonk again. He leaped up screaming, "I'll fight you," but nobody was there. He looked down and found 2 spiky chestnuts. There weren't even any chestnut trees nearby. He figured some passing squirrel must have found him handsome and tossed him a gift. He checked his head, no blood, no holes, praised his ancestors, and started bouncing around preparing to eat. I had no idea that just thinking about my brother had somehow changed his fate. I made my way to Granny Zhao's door. She had 2 red lanterns hanging outside, glowing in the darkness. They looked unsettlingly like the scenery I'd seen in the underworld. I tried not to think about it and knocked. When she opened the door and I stepped inside, I immediately regretted coming. Xiao Tan, the soldier ghost, was sitting in a chair with his legs crossed, grinning at me. What a coincidence. "Come sit down," he said cheerfully. Could I still leave? Too late. Granny Xiao pushed me to sit down and asked about Yanfeng. I tried my hardest not to look at Xiao Tan. If Granny Xiao couldn't see him, and he was always by her side, then she was his beloved? And Yi Fan said she only had a few years left to live? My brain was spinning so fast it nearly short-circuited. Granny Xiao had to call my name several times before I snapped out of it. Then Xiao Tan dropped his bomb. "Hey, zebra girl, do you have feelings for that fool?" I choked on my own saliva so violently, I nearly died coughing. Granny Xiao rushed to pat my back and get me water. The moment she turned away, I hissed at Xiao Tan. "I'm raising him like a son. No, a brother." "Stop talking nonsense." He just smiled and said nothing, looking annoyingly handsome in his tattered military uniform. I handed over the flour, cornmeal, cured meat, an eggs I'd brought for Granny Xiao, Zhao Jian, and Commander Lin. She tried to refuse, but I told her Yanfeng had earned good money selling pearls, so she shouldn't worry. Then I bolted for the door. I was not staying to listen to any more of Xiao Tan's ridiculous accusations about me and Yanfeng. Our relationship was pure. Motherly, no wait, sisterly. As I sprinted away, I could practically hear Xiao Tan thinking, I just said one wrong thing. Was that really worth running like a dog was chasing her? I ran until I was sure Xiao Tan hadn't followed me. So his beloved was Granny Xiao. They even shared the same surname. It wasn't that I was scared of him. It was what he said that made me instinctively want to flee. Who knows what else he'd come up with if I stayed. I shook it off and went home to sleep. The next morning, Yanfeng woke up feeling much better. Before even washing his face, he jumped over our shared wall like a cat and started pounding on my door at 5 in the morning, yelling, Annie, the sun is shining on your butt. I buried my head under the pillow, not listening, but he wouldn't stop. I stomped to the door barefoot, furious, and he grabbed me in a hug. Being able to see you when I open my eyes makes me so happy. My anger evaporated instantly. Then, before I could react, he scooped me up in a princess carry and walked me back to the bedroom, scolding me in my own tone. You can't go barefoot. It's cold. You'll get sick. Be a good girl. He knelt down and placed my foot in his palm to wipe it with a towel. My heart was pounding ridiculously fast. He compared my foot to Out Yen's shell and his own hand, remarking cheerfully how tiny it was. I yanked my foot back, face burning red. He pulled it back out. Not done yet. Can't be unhygienic. Then he looked up at me with those bright eyes and said, when you're old, I'll still take care of you like this. I'll be filial to you forever. I heard my racing heart shatter. I was beet red and mentally screaming at myself, he's a child. He sees you as a parent. What is wrong with you, Su Yu? After some aggressive self-scolding, I got up to make breakfast. The three of us ate together and headed to work. Yanfeng ran off with little Huzi and Arya, who'd found something exciting on the mountain. At the pig shed, Commander Lin pulled me aside and tried to give me something wrapped in a handkerchief. I refused and explained the food came from Yanfeng's pearl money, not mine. He kept it but then mentioned something interesting. Before being sent down, he'd seen foreign visitors who loved pearls. The government used to trade rare items like pearls for foreign currency. If Yanfeng had enough pearls, Lin could arrange contacts to sell them for much more money. I was surprised but interested. I told him I'd discuss it with Yanfeng and bring some pearls to show him that afternoon. He assured me it was safe. Then I caught him looking at me with pity. He was worried I was running out of money, caring for Yanfeng while sharing food with them. He was even planning to have someone retrieve his hidden stash to help me. Little did he know, his broke, young friend had 160,000 yuan in cash sitting in her space. Granny Xiao pulled me into her room to try something she'd cooked. I sat down and looked around, no sign of Xiao Tan. I let out a breath of relief. Looking for me, bad girl? His creepy whisper came from right beside my ear. I breathed too soon. Why are you out during the day? I hissed at him as quietly as possible so Granny Xiao wouldn't hear. I whispered to Xiao Tan, asking if being around Granny Xiao all the time affected her health. He said, she's my wife. Would I hurt her? When I asked why he could appear during the day, he rolled his eyes and said he was a heroic spirit with special privileges, not some ordinary ghost. Then he started acting weird. He fidgeted, cleared his throat, and said in a painfully forced sweet voice, Dear girl, this old grandpa needs a tiny favor. I spat out my water. The image of this tall, blood-soaked soldier doing a delicate feminine act was too much. It was like watching a warrior trying to be a dainty flower. His actual request? He wanted me to burn some paper money and clothes for him. That's it. I was stunned. This great war hero was broke in the afterlife. Nobody had ever burned offerings for him because his body was never found, so he'd been stuck wearing his bloody uniform for decades. I told him to give me his birth date and the time he died, and I'd write up a spirit pass and burn everything for him that night. I was genuinely happy to help a martyr. He offered to tell me where he'd buried valuables in the mountains as payment and asked me to be good to Yu Wu. Granny Xiao for however long she had left. I refused the treasure. I told him I wasn't kind to Granny Xiao for money. Without soldiers like him fighting, none of us would have the lives we have now. He didn't need to feel indebted. Then Granny Xiao brought out osmanthus cakes. Xiao Tan stared at them sadly. He told me she used to hate the smell of osmanthus flowers. Granny Xiao started reminiscing. The day before her husband left for battle, she'd stuffed cotton up her nose to block the smell and made him a whole pot of osmanthus cakes. He told her he'd be back before she knew it. By the time the cakes were eaten, he'd be home. Xiao Tan's voice cracked as he said, "When I died, I still had one piece pressed against my chest that I'd saved. With my last breath, I shoved the blood-soaked cake into my mouth.
See?
I did come back to you." Granny Xiao took a small bite and said softly, "I used to hate osmanthus. Now I make these cakes whenever I miss him. I imagine he's still beside me." She wiped her eyes. "I think he must have lost his memory from his injuries. That's why he can't find his way home." Xiao Tan stood up, heartbroken. "Yuwu, I'm here. I've always been right here beside you." I quietly wiped my own eyes. Their love was something I deeply admired. In my past life, I'd work myself to death without ever experiencing romance. I couldn't fully relate, but I understood. I decided to burn extra spirit money for him tonight, so he could finally clean himself up. At noon I made spicy chicken, sour beef soup, and steamed egg with shrimp, then lounged in my rocking chair drinking rose and hibiscus tea, waiting for Yanfeng. He gave me quite a surprise. I heard a sound. Cluck. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Was that a chicken? A bird? Then Out Yen came barreling through the gate screaming, "Help! Girl! Look at the fool!" Behind him stumbled Yanfeng, wearing his own clothes, but his face. I couldn't even describe it. Out Yen was panicking, yelling for me to wash his face with spirit spring water. But the next second, I burst out laughing so hard I snorted like a pig. Tears streamed down my face. Yanfeng squatted at my feet, miserable, trying to speak but only managing. Cluck. Cluck, cluck. "You don't need to laugh. Ha ha ha, please stop talking," I wheezed, completely unable to breathe. Yanfeng's face was an absolute disaster. He'd been stung by bees everywhere, 2 symmetrical bumps on his forehead, both cheeks swollen like balloons, and his lips puffed up like he had an egg in his mouth. His whole face was red and bloated, eyes squeezed into slits. He looked exactly like that viral video of a dog stung by bees that became an internet meme in my past life. Every time I tried to pull out the stingers with tweezers, I'd look at his face up close and collapse into laughter again. It was chaos. I confirmed Arya and little Huzi hadn't been stung, then used some spirit spring water on his face to stop the pain and itching. But I couldn't heal him completely. The kids had seen his swollen face, and it would be suspicious if he was fine by dinner. He proudly presented his trophy, an enormous honeycomb. No wonder the bees attacked him. I broke off a piece and tasted it. Pure, natural honey, nothing like the sugar-loaded stuff from the future. I made honey water for everyone. Outyen gulped his down and marveled at how tiny insects could make something so delicious. I gave Yanfeng a straw, since his lips were too swollen for a cup. He ate lunch under the laser beam stares of me and Outyen, who couldn't stop studying his ridiculous face. He looked at me mournfully, but didn't speak. He'd learned that opening his mouth only made me laugh harder. That afternoon, while I was preparing things to burn for Xiao Tan, someone called at my door. It was Aunt Chen Guixiang with Jiang Qinggong and a stranger. Aunt Chen explained that a police officer had come to thank me for a good deed. Jiang Qinggong was grinning with his big teeth, thrilled to see me again. He introduced the man beside him, Xiang Tian, the brother of Xiang Wanling, the woman I'd saved from traffickers. Xiang Tian was tall with bronze skin, a buzz cut, and sharp, aggressive eyes. He thanked me formally and bowed deeply. His sister was in the capital and couldn't come yet, but their father had sent gifts. When I tried to brush it off, he bowed again. Then I bowed back. Then he bowed again. Jiang Qinggong watched us going back and forth and blurted out, "Are you two getting married or something?" Both our faces turned bright red. I glared at him, and he shut up instantly. Aunt Chen swooped in to rescue the awkward moment. When I served water, I realized too late that I'd left spirit spring water in the kettle from lunch. Xiang Tian and Jiang Qinggong both guzzled it and started raving about how incredible the water tasted. Sweet, refreshing, invigorating. My heart dropped. Thankfully, Anshin casually explained that the mountain spring water in this area had always been especially good, and that smoothed things over. Then Yanfeng walked in with his bee-stung expression emoji face, trying to say, "Who's here?" but it came out as garbled nonsense. Anshin grabbed his hands and fussed over him. Jiang Qinggong took one look and started shaking with suppressed laughter. He tried to hold it in. I could hear him making little hissing sounds through his teeth like a broken tea kettle. Then he completely lost it, slapping the table and his own thighs, howling with laughter. Yanfeng glared at him resentfully and tried to say, "Stop laughing at me," but it came out as more gibberish, which only made everything worse. Xiang Tian held out longer than anyone, but even he eventually cracked a smile. Only Yanfeng's world contained suffering that day. After things calmed down, we chatted for a while. Xiang Tian was 27, stationed at Green Island Military Base about 3 hours away by bus. He gave me his address and the base phone number, telling me to reach out if I ever needed help. I tried to get him to stay for dinner, but he only had a one-day pass. I also tried to send him home with return gifts, but after an intense back and forth, I lost. That man was impossible to out-polite. Meanwhile, Jiang Qinggong and Yanfeng had somehow become best friends in one afternoon. They huddled together laughing and whispering like they'd known each other for years. When it was time to leave, Jiang Qinggong waved tearfully from the tractor, crying out, "Brother Yanfeng, come find me next time you're at the commune." Yanfeng waved back just as dramatically, looking like he was about to pull out a handkerchief. It was a full theatrical farewell performance. Before leaving, Jiang Qinggong pulled me aside to mention that Mu Qianhan had been too busy to come. I nodded, not sure why that required a private conversation. Anshin laughed and said it was lucky they came directly to my door instead of through the village entrance. Those village aunties were terrifying. They'd give you a full X-ray scan with their eyes as you walked past, then gossip for days. She also told me the village would be organizing a big fishing trip soon. Every household had to contribute workers. As educated youth, I'd only need to help sort fish on shore. Yanfeng, still squatting on the ground counting ants with his swollen face, said he wanted to go out to sea. Anshin said her 2 sons could look after him on the boat. After everyone left, I noticed Yanfeng had come over because Outyin told him to. He'd heard an unfamiliar man's voice at my place and felt inexplicably uncomfortable about it. I was too distracted by his face, looking like a puffy flatbread to notice any subtle emotions. We opened Xiang Tian's gifts. Outyin was digging through the bundle when he yelped, "There's money in here. 2 stacks of bills, 1,000 yuan total. In this era, a regular worker earns about 28 yuan a month, so this was an enormous sum. Plus there were canned peaches, malted milk, biscuits, and Cuban sugar. I felt uneasy about accepting so much. Outyin and Yanfeng couldn't understand why I wasn't thrilled. I tried to explain that human debts of gratitude are the hardest to repay, and I wasn't sure my actions warranted such generosity. While washing Outyin in a basin, he protested about propriety between men and women, which I ignored. I told them I had a gut feeling Xiang Tian's father might want something for me eventually. Why else send so much? But I couldn't figure out what I had that would interest someone that powerful. What I didn't know was that Xiang Tian's father, Xiang Sheng, had investigated my background and simply felt sorry for me. Combined with me saving his daughter, he just wanted to help. His generous intentions actually made me more suspicious. Funny how that works. I decided I'd find something nice to send back, as a return gift, when I could. Can't walk around owing people. That evening, after sending Yanfeng and Outyin home, I went shopping on my Pinduoduo app for Xiao Tan. I bought him several outfits, a paper house with furniture, a money tree, gold ingots, and plenty of spirit currency. I also wrote up his spirit pass and prepared the envelope. Without that, nothing would reach him. By 8 o'clock, it was pitch dark. I quietly closed my gate, hopped on my electric scooter, and zipped off toward the beach. Next door, Outyin and Yanfeng noticed me leaving. Outyan wondered where I was going so late. Yanfeng felt hurt. Apparently, he wasn't my favorite anymore since I had secrets now. Little did they know. I zoomed to the beach on my electric scooter. Xiao Tian was already waiting. He almost called me bad girl again, but caught himself mid-word. I told him I'd call him uncle, and he nodded approvingly. When I waved my hand and a mountain of gold, silver, and spirit treasures appeared before him, the look on his face was priceless. He'd been a broke ghost for decades, and suddenly he was rich. He was practically vibrating with joy. I burned the spirit pass first, then the money and treasures. As the flames consumed each item, they materialized in his world. Gold mountains, silver mountains, a money tree, and finally a grand courtyard house that assembled itself piece by piece as the paper model turned to ash. After I finished and headed home, Xiao Tian rushed to the underworld to set up his new house, plant his money tree, save his fortune, and go on a shopping spree. He even spent some silver on a bath and massage. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been properly clean. Then he put on new clothes and went to the underworld's administrative office to apply for a dream visit permit. Tonight, he was going to see his wife looking his best. That night, Granny Xiao dreamed of her husband for the first time since he'd left for war all those years ago. Meanwhile, Aunt Chen and Grandpa Sun discussed how Lu Mei seemed to be genuinely changing, working harder, no more passive-aggressive comments. Grandpa Sun said coldly that she was smart enough to know Sun Jianmin had only kept her for Kong Kong's sake. Lu Mei was indeed lying in bed watching her husband play with their son, silently vowing to treasure her family. Though she still thought of Yanfeng as just some fool. Old habits die hard. Back home, I had no idea Outyan and Yanfeng had been eavesdropping through the wall with their surprisingly sharp ears. I went into my space, picked out some nice round, milky white pearls for Commander Lin, then checked on my farm. I noticed gaps in the ginseng plot from when I'd yanked some out during Yanfeng's illness and replanted them. Then I discovered my stockpile had grown enormous, enough milk, beef, pork, and poultry to last into my next lifetime. That gave me an idea. I could make powdered milk and milk tablets, perfect for gifts and snacking on the go. I could also make pork jerky and pickled eggs instead of spending money buying gifts. I ordered a milk powder machine and a tablet press from Pinduoduo, figured out the instructions, and got to work. About 7 or 8 pounds of milk made 1 pound of powder. I cranked out 30 pounds of milk tablets, packed everything into bags of different sizes, and finally took a shower to wash off the milk smell. The pork jerky and pickled eggs could wait until tomorrow. I yawned and collapsed into bed. That night, some people slept sweetly.
Some had nightmares.
And some were busy beating up liars in their dreams. I slept wonderfully, no dreams at all. I was brushing my teeth when Yanfeng and Outyan walked in, both completely silent. They stood there staring at me with the most dramatic wounded expressions, like I was some unfaithful lover. Yanfeng's bee stings had gone down enough that his eyes weren't squeezed shut anymore, which meant he could give me the full force of his reproachful gaze. I finished brushing and asked, "Are you two performing a tragedy for me this morning?" Outyan huffed and wouldn't speak to me. Yanfeng couldn't hold it in though. He blurted out, "Andy, am I still your favorite?" I stood on tiptoe to pat his head and said, "Now, always and forever, my favorite." His face went from cloudy to sunshine instantly. Then he scooped me up with one arm like I was a toddler. I reflexively grabbed his neck and yelled at him to put me down, but he just bounced me happily, me in one hand, Outyan in the other, and marched off, shouting, "Let's go eat." Outyan was cheering, "Family of 3, breakfast time." These two are absolutely unhinged. For breakfast, I served the powdered milk I'd made, fried dough sticks, and pickled radish. The milk tasted great, maybe even better than fresh, though that might have been pride talking. They both asked for seconds and loved the milk tablets too, crunching through handfuls like popcorn. I told Yanfeng about Commander Lin's pearl trade idea. He blinked innocently and said, "Auntie, you make all the decisions." So I packed up the pearls along with milk powder and tablets as gifts for Granny Xiao, Commander Lin, and Zhao Jian. At the pig shed, the pigs had gotten smart. They'd learned to stay quiet until Yanfeng left before chatting among themselves. He dropped off the supplies and ran to cut pig grass. Granny Xiao looked radiant today, glowing skin, great energy. I was puzzling over why when the back of my neck went cold. I turned around and nearly screamed. Xiao Tan was standing under the red lanterns with a face covered in purple and green bruises, looking absolutely terrifying. I shuffled over and whispered, "Did you get robbed by other ghosts last night?" He snapped, as if those wandering spirits could beat me. I shuffled to his other side. "Then why do you look like that?" He turned away. "Don't want to talk about it," but I pieced it together. He'd spent 10 gold ingots on a dream visit permit to see his wife. After decades apart, he'd opened his arms wide, ready for a tender reunion. Granny Zhao's reaction went from shock to joy to sorrow to fury, all in under a minute. Then she marched over and beat him senseless for the entire dream, crying and cursing him while pummeling him with her fists. He'd paid 10 gold ingots for a night of domestic violence. Before I could get the full story, he vanished, rushing back to the underworld to buy another dream visit for tonight. I sighed. What a cliffhanger. He left before I got the juicy details. I noticed the newly arrived couples looked much better. Clean clothes with patches, better color in their faces, no more hollow stares. Zhou Hongjun and Jiang Gua were clearly taking good care of their parents. Zhao Jian checked Granny Zhao's pulse and was shocked. It was stronger than ever. He nearly dropped the pig feed bucket, thinking she was having a final burst of energy before death. But no, she'd simply made peace with something deep inside her heart. The dream visit had healed something. I gave Granny Xiao the pearls for Commander Lin, plus the milk powder and tablets, 1 share for each elder. Everything was made with Spirit Spring water products, so it would genuinely help their health. Granny Xiao held my hand gently and slipped a red jade bracelet onto my wrist. I tried to refuse, even without knowing much about jade. I could tell it was expensive. But she said she valued feelings over price, and that in these times, grain was worth more than jewelry anyway. She told me she had plenty more treasures, and to just accept it. I got a little emotional. It's just how I am. I'm someone who gives everything when people show me even a little kindness. Taking care of Yanfeng is like that too. I see my old self in him. Nobody rescued me when I was young. I had to claw my way through alone. Now that I have the ability, protecting him feels like protecting the child I once was. And he deserves every bit of it. Granny Xiao seemed to understand. She'd heard I was a martyr's orphan. She pulled me into a hug and patted my head, saying simply, "Good girl." I left with red eyes. I really do love this era sometimes. I tried to thank Yi Fan through the communication stone, but he was busy getting ready for a blind date with flowers he'd stolen from the river of forgetfulness.
Typical.
At home, a mailman was waiting with a package and letter from Jiang Xing, my brother's friend. The letter contained exactly 1 sentence. "There's 100 yuan under the pastry box. Contact me if needed." He'd actually spent money on a stamp just to tell me that instead of putting a note in the package. The man was truly allergic to words. The package had red shrimp candy, ox-tongue biscuits, hawthorn cakes, 2 boxes of Beijing 8 delicacies, and 2 roasted ducks. I bit into a date paste cake and nearly melted. I decided to send return gifts to both Jiang Xing and Xiang Tian's family. Then I went into my space to make jerky. I made 2 kinds of pork jerky, one with thin sliced cuts dried on racks in the sunshine, then steamed and baked with honey and sesame, and another with ground meat mixed with seasonings, rolled flat, pan-fried, and glazed with honey and teriyaki sauce. Both turned out amazing. Couldn't stop eating them. Once I had the technique down, I switched to the spirit-infused pork for my space. But then I realized the spiritual energy in the meat would be a dead giveaway if I gave it to outsiders. I muttered, if only I could extract the spiritual energy. The moment I said it, wisps of white mist rose from the jerky and vanished. I tasted a piece, delicious, but without that tingling sensation of spiritual energy. It actually worked. My space could remove the energy on command. Energized by this discovery, I went on a production spree. The farm animals watched in horror as familiar smells filled the air. By the end of the afternoon, I'd made about 200 pounds each of pork jerky, beef jerky, chicken jerky, and duck jerky. 800 pounds of jerky total. I was quite proud of my productivity. I stored all the jerky in my space with the spiritual energy still intact. I could extract it right before giving it away. Making everything had drained me mentally, so I arranged little plates of each type, collapsed into my rocking chair in the yard, brewed jasmine tea, and snacked on pork jerky in the autumn breeze. Before I knew it, I dozed off. When Yen Feng and Out Yen came back from work, Out Yen was wearing a tiny grass hat Yen Feng had woven for him. They spotted the jerky immediately and devoured it with glowing reviews. They insisted the jerky was enough for lunch, so I didn't even have to cook. Victory. Then I had a terrible idea. Teach Yen Feng to cook, so I wouldn't have to do it every day. Within minutes, boom. A column of black smoke billowed out of the kitchen. I stumbled out looking like I'd been mining coal, hair sticking up everywhere, face completely black. Out Yen staggered to the doorway, coughing his lungs out. Yen Feng? Not a scratch. He was beaming with excitement, dragging me back inside to keep learning. The rest of the afternoon was pure chaos. Explosions, crashes, bangs. Every time I tried to escape, Yen Feng grabbed me and pulled me back. Out Yen tried to hide since he was small enough to dodge, but Yen Feng's big hand snatched him right back into the war zone. By evening, Out Yen and I were sprawled on the ground, defeated. When I opened my mouth to speak, black smoke puffed out. Yen Feng poked me in wonder. Wow, Annie, you can breathe smoke. I didn't even have the strength to hit him. Out Yen had transformed from a white clam into a gleaming black clam. Only Out Yen and I suffered that day. After that traumatic experience, I decided Yen Feng was permanently banned from the kitchen. When he enthusiastically volunteered to make dinner, Out Yen and I used every ounce of remaining strength to physically restrain him. Meanwhile, Xiang Tian had returned to base and reported to his father. He was also nursing a mystery. A wound that should have taken 2 weeks to heal had scabbed over in 1 day. The only unusual thing he'd done was drink water at my house. He'd felt his whole body tingle and the wound itch when he drank it. By evening, it was nearly healed. He quietly resolved to never tell anyone about my special water. I had no idea he'd basically figured me out. The next morning, I woke up extra early and had breakfast ready before Yen Feng arrived at 6. No way was I letting him near my kitchen again. He actually felt guilty for sleeping in and not cooking for me. If I didn't know he was simple-minded, I'd have thought he was trolling me. Out Yen gave me a silent thumbs up of solidarity. On the way to work, Yen Feng suggested I come to the mountains with them sometime. I'd been here for a while and never explored. So we planned a camping trip for the next day. I'd prepare food and drinks, and we'd spend a night outdoors. Both Yen Feng and Out Yen were thrilled. At the pig shed, Xiao Tan was nowhere to be seen. Commander Lin gave me a subtle nod and mouthed that he'd have news for me soon about the pearl trade. I noticed one of the new women from the cow shed was missing, and her husband looked worried. As I turned to leave, Zhao Jian came running after me, out of breath. You wait. I stopped when Zhao Jian called after me. He looked anxious and asked if I had any fever medicine. One of the women in the cow shed, Zhou Aigua's wife, Lu Lan, was burning up with fever, and he didn't have the right herbs. I ran home and grabbed the fever pills I'd bought for Yen Feng. When I came back, Zhao Jian pulled me into his little medicine room and pushed a small iron box toward me. Inside was a property deed. He dug it out from under the bricks beneath his bed. I tried to refuse. These people keep giving me their treasures. But after several rounds of pushing the box back and forth, I lost again. I really need to work on my refusal game. Zhao Jian rushed the medicine to the cow shed. Zhou Aigua was nearly in tears waiting. His wife could barely open her eyes to swallow the pill before passing out again. Zhao Jian told him to keep wiping her forehead and let her sweat through the fever. Zhou Aigua held her hand, crying quietly. You have to get better. You know I can't live without you. Back home, I started preparing packages to mail to Jiangxing and Xiang Tian's family. I pulled out a 70-year-old ginseng root from my space for Jiangxing and went to ask Zhao Jian how to process it. On my way back to the pig shed, my third trip that morning, I ran into Xiao Tan. He'd been hiding from me all day because his face looked even worse than yesterday. 2 nights of dream visits. 2 nights of getting beaten up by his wife. I couldn't help laughing. Uncle, you're even more handsome today. His face was swollen like a pig's head. He was genuinely confused and upset. Both times, Granny Xiao clearly missed him desperately, but the moment she saw him in the dream, she'd beat him senseless before he could say a word. He'd spent a fortune on dream visits only to get pummeled. I offered to ask Granny Xiao about it, but he panicked.
No.
She's timid. Don't scare her. If hitting me makes her happy, then fine, though his resentful expression said otherwise. He disappeared to go by yet another dream visit. I shook my head. This was not going to end well for his face. When I showed Zhao Jian the 70-year ginseng, his eyes nearly popped out. He said its potency was actually comparable to a 100-year root. Then I pulled out 2 more 50-year roots and asked him to process those 2. He stared at me, speechless. Does your family grow ginseng like radishes? He processed them without asking questions. He understood people have their secrets. But he warned me seriously, an innocent person carrying jade invites trouble. You must hide your abilities. Don't let anyone know. I felt warm inside. I know, Uncle Zhao. But you're not an outsider. I told him to keep one of the 50-year roots for himself, Commander Lin and Granny Xiao. He tried to refuse, saying they hadn't finished the last batch I'd given them and had nothing to repay me with. But I could see he wanted to say something else. And Zhao Jian tried to say they weren't worth my kindness. I told him firmly, nobody deserves it more than you. He mumbled that his property deed wasn't worth much these days. I looked him in the eye and said, Uncle Zhao, the sky will clear eventually. He stood there frozen long after I left, then whispered to himself, the darkness before dawn. Back home, I prepared the care packages. For Jiang Xing, my brother's war buddy who helped me get here, I packed 3 pounds each of chicken, pork, and duck jerky, 5 bags of milk powder, 10 bags of milk tablets, and 2 large dried flatfish for my space. Since he's someone my brother trusted, I only removed half the spiritual energy from the food. The 70-year ginseng would go in once Zhao Jian finished processing it. For Xiang Tian, I was more cautious, since I didn't know him well yet. 2 pounds of each jerky, 2 bags of milk powder, 4 bags of milk tablets, with only 1/10 of the spiritual energy left in. That evening, Yanfeng and Outyan brought back the processed ginseng. When I explained the packages were for my brother's comrade in Beijing, Yanfeng said sweetly, when I meet him someday, I'll thank him for sending you to me. Outyan dug around inside his shell and pulled out a fist-sized pearl, insisting we couldn't owe anyone favors. Yanfeng volunteered to dive for more treasures that night. My eyes stung. I gently pushed the pearl back and explained that giving too many good things can actually cause problems. The ginseng alone was already conspicuously generous. What I didn't know was that this single ginseng root would indirectly change my fate. Outyan nodded, then muttered that being human was too complicated with all the social rules. Being a clam was better. See someone you don't like?
Smack them.
Want something?
Take it.
I ordered camping supplies from Pinduoduo. 2 pop-up tents, air mattresses, a little table, and a portable stove. This would be my first camping trip ever. In my past life, working 6 days a week left 0 time for fun. That night, some of us were excited about tomorrow's outing. Some tossed and turned. 1 clam fell asleep instantly, without a care. And 1 ghost was still getting beaten up in dreams. Though this time, in the last 10 minutes, Granny Xiao finally pulled Xiao Ten up, hugged him desperately, and sobbed her heart out. She hit him with her little fists and cried about how cruel he was for never appearing in her dreams all these years. The next morning I woke at 5, inspired to make sea urchin soup dumplings. I used my mental powers to crack open 200 sea urchins, made pork skin, jelly for the soup filling, mixed ground pork belly with seasonings, then very carefully folded in the sea urchin. The key is not to break the golden roe. I added cubes of frozen pork jelly for that burst of hot soup when you bite in. Auntie, I'm here. Yanfeng vaulted over the wall with Outyan. His eyes lit up and he announced, I'll cook today. I nearly jumped out of my skin.
No.
We're making dumplings. You can roll the wrappers. His eyes went dark for a second, like someone flipped his light switch off. Outyan nudged me urgently. I turned around and saw that Pout could hold a grenade. Come on, it's time for your special talent. Nobody rolls rappers like you. His eyes flicked back on like a lamp. Okay. Out Yen scattered flour, Yen Feng rolled, I rapped. Teamwork made it fast. I placed the buns in the steamer for a second rise, had Yen Feng boil the water, then steamed them on high for exactly 8 minutes before pulling the fire. The sea urchin soup dumplings came out perfectly. Steam them too long and the urchin turns bitter and hard, but with a 2-minute rest after the fire goes out, they were just right. The kitchen smelled incredible. Yen Feng and Out Yen were practically vibrating with hunger. When I set the buns on the table, their chopsticks became blurs. But even starving, Yen Feng placed the first bun in my bowl, then one in Out Yen's, before taking one himself. My heart melted a little. That first bite, the thin skin broke open and rich. Piping hot broth flooded my mouth, sea urchin sweetness mingling with savory pork. We demolished the entire plate in silence, then sat there holding our stuffed bellies. I stored the leftovers in my space for next time. I considered sending some to Uncle Sun's family, but after what happened last time with Lu Mei, I decided against it. We split up for the day. Yen Feng and Out Yen would handle pig grass while I went to the commune to mail the packages. We'd meet at 3 o'clock on the mountain for our camping trip. At the village entrance, I got the usual treatment from the Annies. Everyone went silent and stared at me like I was walking through an X-ray machine. Zhang Zhaodi was there too, glaring at me with hatred. When I looked back at her coldly, she dropped her gaze. But I could feel the malice radiating off her even after I turned away. She was still angry about when I'd hit her. Apparently, she'd gone crying to her adoptive parents, who told her she was wrong and should apologize to me. Instead of reflecting, she blamed them for being poor and ruining her chance to be adopted by a wealthy family. She even hated her own adoptive parents now. That girl's thinking was truly twisted. But I wasn't worried. If she tried anything, I'd teach her another lesson. At the post office, the workers drooled over the smell of meat wafting from my packages. I filled out the forms and left. When Jiang Xing opened his package in Beijing, his perpetually calm face apparently cracked. He couldn't believe I'd just stuffed a premium 70-year ginseng root loose inside a regular parcel. He tasted the milk tablets and jerky, and his expression kept shifting. He muttered that my brother and I were equally reckless with our generosity. My letter had been short, just telling him the food was homemade and good for his health. He lit a cigarette, and the smoke hid whatever emotions crossed his face when he thought about my brother. Xiang Tian got his package the next day. His bunkmate Zhang Guang brought it in, and Xiang Tian was shocked. Nobody had ever mailed him anything before. His father sent money directly. His sister only wrote when she wanted cash. This was his first real care package. Zhang Guang watched him open it and smelled the incredible meat aroma. Then he spotted the milk tablets and panicked, thinking they were medicine. He started worrying about how to convince his commander not to trust folk remedies. He himself had once made his hemorrhoids worse with home cures and considered himself a victim of quack medicine. Xiang Tian ignored him completely. He'd found my letter inside. Xiang Tian opened my package and shared some with his bunkmate Zhang Guang, who'd been panicking thinking the milk tablets were folk medicine. One taste shut him up completely. Xiang Tian kept one bag of each for himself and locked the rest in his cabinet. He lived in a barracks full of wolves who devour everything. He left some on the table for the others to share when they got back. Zhang Guang couldn't even respond. His mouth was already stuffed with jerky, and he'd lost all speaking ability. After the post office, I had time before the ox cart left, so I headed toward the supply store. That's when I noticed someone following me. I smiled to myself and deliberately walked into a dead-end alley. 2 guys, Li San and Zhang Ergu, came around the corner expecting easy prey. Instead, they found me standing there with my arms crossed, waiting. They stared at each other, confused that I wasn't running or screaming. They finally remembered their lines. Hand over your stuff. This is a robbery. I picked up a stick from the corner. Show me what you've got. 30 seconds later, they were both on the ground. They confessed everything. Zhang Zhaodi had hired them to strip my clothes off, rob me, and dummy tied up naked in front of the supply store to destroy my reputation. In this era, that would be a death sentence for a woman's social standing. Even as a victim, people would blame me. Why did they strip her and nobody else? She must have done something wrong. That girl's heart was truly poisonous. I told them to hand over their money. They were stunned. The robbers were getting robbed. They emptied their pockets. Less than 1 yuan total, no ration tickets. The most pathetic robbery I'd ever seen. They were actually embarrassed about how broke they were. Then I gave them new orders. Go find Zhang Zhaodi and do to her exactly what she'd planned for me. I snapped the stick in half for emphasis. They scrambled away in terror. What I didn't notice was that someone had been watching from the shadows, a slim, sharp-looking young man named Sun Jing. He was one of our village's reform troublemakers, someone Grandpa's son actually respected. He'd been at the commune selling herbs when he spotted the two thugs following me. Apparently, I had quite a reputation in the village. The kids called me Big Sister. The young men all had crushes on me, and my fame largely came from the time I'd beaten up Zhang Zhaodi. Nobody dared approach me because of that plus Grandpa's son's protection. Zhang Ergu and Li San ran straight to Zhang Zhaodi's meeting spot. She was beaming when she saw them. Is it done? Without a word, they grabbed her and rifled through her pockets. She screamed, but they found 3 yuan, more than both of them combined. They took it and ran. Zhang Zhaodi was shrieking with rage when I appeared in front of her. We meet again, I said. Her hatred peaked. What are you doing here? If you touch me, I'll never let you go. I kicked her legs out and she hit the ground. Funny, you can dish it out but can't take it? That's pretty hypocritical. I sat on Zhang Zhaodi and pinned both her hands together, then slapped her face until my own hand went numb. When she still had the energy to scream threats, calling me names and swearing she'd have me stripped and thrown to beggars, I took off my shoe and went harder. For a split second, I genuinely wanted to kill her. I even bought rat poison from Pinduoduo in my mind. But I noticed a shoe peeking out from behind the wall corner. Someone was watching. So I couldn't do anything permanent. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Next time, I will end you." Then I slammed her down and walked away without looking back. I knew she was already plotting her next move while crying on the ground. That's just who she is. Fine, let her come. I hoped she wouldn't keep me waiting too long. While I was lost in dark thoughts, a big hand landed on my shoulder from behind. Pure reflex, I grabbed it, twisted, and flipped the person over my shoulder. It was Jiang Qinggong, lying on the ground, dazed. He just wanted to say hello. I stood there mortified. Mu Qianhan walked right past his fallen partner without a glance and greeted me with a warm smile. Typical. Jiang Qinggong dusted himself off and didn't blame me at all. We ended up eating together at the state restaurant. Jiang Qinggong talked nonstop the entire meal while Mu Qianhan couldn't get a single word in. His only role was saying yes and right whenever Jiang Qinggong asked him to confirm something. They were like a comedy duo, one doing all the jokes, one just nodding along. A perfect mismatch. After lunch, I grabbed the ox cart home. Zhang Zhaodi was nowhere to be seen. Good. By 2:30, I was rushing to meet Yanfeng at the mountain base. We hiked deep into the forest for over an hour. I was practically crawling by the end, until we reached his recommended spot. It was beautiful. Flat ground, a winding stream in the distance, rabbits drinking at the water's edge, and everything still green despite it being late autumn. I pulled the pop-up tents from my space and hit the button. Yanfeng and Outyen watched in amazement as the tents assembled themselves in seconds. Inside Yanfeng's tent, I set up beds and toiletries like a magic show. His eyes went wide, and I could tell he was making a silent promise to protect my secret. Outyen, who'd been reading my romance novels for entertainment, had apparently adopted a CO persona. He stood on my shoulder surveying the landscape and declared, "Woman, behold the empire I've conquered for you." I nearly choked. Yanfeng ran off to gather firewood and came back with 2 cleaned wild chickens. "Am I amazing?" he asked, holding them up proudly. Outyen bounced beside him. "I helped wash them. I told them they were both incredible and I couldn't manage without them." Yanfeng nodded earnestly and said, "We'll always be together, Auntie. We'll never be apart." Outyen puffed up and said grandly, "Woman, I permit you to stay with us forever." Yanfeng carved sticks into sharp skewers, stacked firewood into a neat grid shape, and built 2 tripod stands to hold the chickens over the fire, all without even thinking about it. His hands just moved on their own. This is the same guy who nearly blew up my kitchen, yet here he was, an outdoor cooking genius. He said he vaguely remembered living alone on a mountain once and always roasting his own catches this way. I marinated the wild chickens with Orland seasoning and we started grilling. Yanfeng carefully rotated the sticks to control the heat while Out Yen crouched nearby drooling. I pulled out sodas and juice for my space, plus some lettuce to balance out the grease. The chicken was delicious. Crispy skin, juicy meat, washed down with fizzy drinks. But 2 chickens weren't enough for 3 hungry stomachs. After a spirited debate, we voted for pork. I concentrated on picking the best pig for my space, and whoops! The next second, my sentient wild piglet Batian materialized next to the campfire, still chewing grass. Yanfeng and Out Yen pounced on him instantly. Yanfeng held him up and said, "Andy, small pigs like this taste the freshest." Out Yen nodded solemnly. Batian looked around. Darkness, campfire, sharp sticks, knife, seasonings. And himself. The complete roast pig package. "Master, save my pig life," his screams echoed through the entire valley, triggering distant wolf howls. I quickly waved him back into my space and apologized. He huffed, accepted some vegetables as compensation, and dragged them back to his den to eat away his trauma. I coughed awkwardly and told the disappointed duo that pig was actually off the menu. Let's have roast whole lamb instead. They didn't care, food was food. I carefully selected a goat this time, processed it in my space, and brought it out ready to grill. This opened up the conversation about my space. I admitted the truth. Yes, it was a small world with everything inside. Yanfeng immediately went serious. "You can never tell anyone else." Out Yen was jealous. "It's even better than my companion's space," but agreed I had to be extremely careful. I nodded. They were the only ones I'd ever trust with this. The roast lamb was spectacular. Golden, crispy skin infused with honey and spices. Yanfeng's knife skills made quick work of carving. We were demolishing it when the bushes rustled. A pair of fuzzy gray ears poked out. Then a small wolf pup bounced into the clearing. Nobody moved. The pup sat there wiggling its cute little nose, then let out a tentative howl. "Aro?" Yanfeng looked at Out Yen. "What's it saying?" Out Yen was clueless. "How would I know?" Yanfeng frowned. "You're both not human. Shouldn't you speak the same language?" Out Yen felt personally attacked by that phrasing but couldn't quite articulate why. Turns out I could understand the pup perfectly. It was saying hello and had followed the smell of food. I asked if it wanted some. It hopped over and sat beside me. "Well, this little wolf won't say no." Out Yen stared at me in horror. "You really aren't human," I glared at him. "Why don't you check if there's any water inside your shell?" Yanfeng helpfully picked Out Yen up and shook him upside down. "He's empty inside." Out Yen nearly threw up his dinner. "Put me down." I put some lamb on a lettuce leaf for the little wolf pup. It spun in a happy circle, said, "Thank you, two-legged beast," and scarfed it down, making little happy noises. We kept feeding it while we ate. When I gave it water, it politely thanked me again. Such a well-mannered little wolf. After eating itself into a round ball, it flopped onto its back. Yanfeng poked its soft belly and it didn't even care, just purred and fell asleep. When I reminded it to go home, before its mother worried, something clicked. The pup leaped up in a panic. It had completely forgotten why it came. "Two-legged beast. My mom is hurt. Can you come save her?" What a great son. Forgot his injured mother the moment he smelled roast lamb. The wolf den was somewhere Yanfeng had visited many times before. The pup had followed his scent here. The mother wolf had told it he was a good human. The mountain path was terrible at night. After I nearly fell for the 3rd time, Yanfeng grabbed my arm, swung me onto his back, scooped up the pup, and launched himself forward like an arrow. I clung to his neck for dear life. The poor pup was squished between us, tongue hanging out from being squeezed on a full stomach. Out Yen rode on top of Yanfeng's head, howling with excitement. At the den, a magnificent white male wolf came out growling. The pup bounced over. "Daddy, these are the two-legged beasts I brought to help Mommy. They also fed me yummy lamb." The wolf dad glanced at his dim-witted only child and ignored him. I told the father wolf directly that I could understand them. After a brief exchange, he let us inside. The mother wolf was lying in a pool of blood. She tried to bare her teeth at me, but when she saw Yanfeng behind me, she dragged her broken body upright, crying out, "Savior." Yanfeng just stared blankly. He didn't remember her at all. I examined the wound and found she'd been shot. With spirit spring water helping, I managed to extract the bullet. She drank deeply and her wounds visibly improved. Then she told us her story. When she was young, she'd fallen into a hunter's trap and Yanfeng saved her. But back then, he wasn't like this. He'd been sharp and capable, nothing like the confused boy he was now. He'd visited occasionally, always bringing food. That explained the pup's gluttony, inherited from mom. The last time she saw the normal Yanfeng, someone was chasing him trying to kill him. She rallied her wolf pack to help him escape. After that, he disappeared. But the bad person kept coming back to the mountains with others. She'd been secretly sabotaging them whenever she could. This time, she spotted the enemy alone on the other side of the mountain and couldn't resist. She attacked and bit him. But as she fled, he shot her. Now I understood where the bullet lodged in Yanfeng's brain came from. It was this same person who'd tried to kill him. Sometimes wolves are more loyal than humans. One act of kindness, and this mother wolf had been waging a one-wolf guerrilla war against his enemy ever since. Outyin stood on Yanfeng's shoulder and gently patted his head, shaken by how close to death the boy had come. I asked the mother wolf what the bad people did here. She said they had some kind of underground room deeper in the mountains. Every full moon, the 15th of the lunar month, they came, looked around suspiciously, then went inside until morning. Today was the 17th. She'd been shot 2 days ago and wouldn't have survived without us. Good deeds really do come back around. I sat in deep thought about who these people might be, spies or traitors operating a secret base in the mountains. I couldn't report it yet without more information. What I didn't notice was Yanfeng sitting with his head bowed. The innocent look in his beautiful eyes had vanished. Hidden beneath his lowered lids was something cold and dangerous. The wolf dad sensed something off about Yanfeng for a moment, circled him, sniffed him, but couldn't figure out what was different. Being a practical wolf, he gave up thinking about it and went back to his injured wife. Wife comes first, always. I left the wolf family a whole processed pig with spiritual energy and a big barrel of spirit spring water. Enough for a day. The little pup watched us leave with the saddest eyes. On the way back, Outyin nudged me and pointed at Yanfeng. He'd gone completely silent, which was very unlike him. I jogged up to his side and asked if he was okay. He looked down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something about his gaze felt different, more intense. But he just said, "Nothing, Auntie," in his usual way, and Outyin and I exchanged a look. Something felt slightly off, but we were both too tired to figure out what. Then Outyin started shouting from Yanfeng's shoulder, "Girl, ditch, ditch, ditch," trying to warn me about a gully ahead. But my mouth moved faster than my brain. Hearing what sounded like a cheer, I automatically yelled back, "Olé! Olé! Olé!" like a sports chant. The next second, my foot found empty air, and I pitched forward into the ravine. Yanfeng caught my arm just in time and pulled me up. I clutched my chest, gasping. Almost ruined my face. Outyin was furious. "I was screaming ditch at you. What spell were you chanting?" My face burned red. This is my one tiny flaw. My mouth is always faster than my brain. And my other strength is being physically capable, but mentally simple. Yanfeng gave me a look that was almost amused. "Maybe I should carry you, Annie." The way he said, "Auntie," had a strange weight to it. He crouched down, and I climbed on without arguing. Second time's a charm. He ran like a leopard through the forest. At first I kept my eyes shut, but he said softly, "Try looking. Don't be afraid. I'm steady." I opened one eye. The scenery was rushing past, cool night wind on my face. I looked up and saw the moon like a huge silver plate, lighting up the entire valley. I smiled genuinely. "Wow, it's beautiful." Outyin was clinging to Yanfeng's collar, flapping in the wind, copying me. "So beautiful. Something softened in Yanfeng's eyes. Just a flicker. Back at camp, we relit the fire and said goodnight. I passed out immediately. Aotian rolled himself into his blanket like a little ball, tucked his arms and legs into his shell, and was snoring within seconds. Yanfeng envied that sleep quality. Then, something I didn't witness. Yanfeng looked around at all the modern items in the tent, his eyes dark and unreadable. He stepped outside, and his body suddenly seized up like he'd been electrocuted. He fought it, clenching his jaw, but collapsed. Some time later, he woke up again. But this time his eyes were different. Innocent, frightened, the real Yanfeng. He whispered tearfully into the empty air. "Don't go too far," no one answered. Just the occasional pop of burning embers. He trembled, looked between his tent and mine, and made a decision. "Auntie? Are you asleep?" I was deep in a dream where a handsome man with 8-pack abs was holding my hand, saying, "Darling, wanna touch my..." And then suddenly, he started clucking like a chicken. I stared at Dream Man making bird noises and thought, is he actually a rooster? I was yanked awake by the real clucking, Yanfeng calling through the tent. I opened the flap, furious. This better be important. He stood there hugging his pillow, eyes brimming with tears. "Auntie, I had a nightmare. A bad person killed me in the dream. I'm scared." My anger evaporated completely. Looking at my boy standing there so vulnerable, my maternal instincts exploded. I waved Yanfeng into my tent and set up an air mattress for him.
Good night.
Dreams are always the opposite of reality, I mumbled before falling right back asleep. Back to my dream about the 8-pack abs guy. What I didn't know was that in my sleep, I rolled off my bed, Yanfeng caught me, and then I latched onto him, rubbed his stomach, and bit him. He looked down at me, drooling on him, a little hurt but mostly content. Then his eyes went dark and he whispered to the air, "I won't let you take my auntie away." A voice in his head responded mockingly, "Oh really? Good luck then." He held me tighter, his innocent eyes turning hard and possessive. "She's mine. Only mine." I knew nothing about any of this. In my dream, I was happily groping Dream Man's abs with a blissful smile. I woke up late to find Yanfeng already roasting wild rabbit and 3 plucked chickens waiting their turn. Aotian was drooling nearby. When he scolded me for oversleeping, I told him scientifically that elderly people naturally need less sleep. He almost exploded. I'm in my prime for a clam. Yanfeng was unusually quiet all morning. On the walk home, I pulled out a vintage tin wind-up frog from my space and handed it to him. His face lit up instantly. All his dark thoughts forgotten. My boy was back to normal. At home, Aunt Chen was waiting at my door. She told me the fishing trip was set for 5 days from now and asked me to prepare supplies for Yanfeng. Then she stayed to chat and told me about my second uncle, Sun Qingshan, the messy family drama I'd been curious about. When he was young, he'd had an innocent crush on the neighbor's daughter, but the widow remarried and took the girl away. His first love ended before it began. He married Wang Lanhua, my quiet, kind second aunt, through a family arrangement. Their marriage wasn't passionate, but it was peaceful. They had 2 sons who grew up, married, and had their own children. Then his first love came back, divorced with a son. They reconnected, and the affair blazed up instantly. He wanted to fix his regret. She wanted a meal ticket. They matched perfectly in their selfishness. Sun Qingshan demanded Wang Lanhua leave with nothing. He was 42 years old, with married sons and grandchildren, and he wanted to throw away his whole family for a teenage crush. Grandpa Sun Qingshu beat him with so many wooden sticks he lost count. But Sun Qingshan was determined. "Kill me if you want, I'm getting divorced." Here's where it got really dirty. Back then, most rural marriages weren't officially registered, just a village banquet. Sun Qingshan exploited this. He took his mistress Wang Chunmiao to the commune and got an official marriage certificate. Just like that, the mistress became the legal wife and Wang Lanhua became nothing. Everyone was devastated. His 2 sons disowned him. He brought in village elders and officials to write a formal separation. The sons would each give him 500 pounds of grain yearly after he turned 55. But Wang Lanhua, who'd been meek her entire life, finally grew a spine. She demanded the family assets be split 4 ways: her share, his share, and one for each son. She wanted a wall built through the courtyard to separate the sons from their father. And she warned that if he refused, she'd report him to the commune for immoral conduct. Sun Qingshan wasn't scared. But Wang Chunmiao, the mistress, panicked. She'd been hiding behind him the whole time, letting him fight all her battles. Aunt Chen continued the saga of second uncle Sun Qingshan. Wang Chunmiao, the mistress, was terrified of being publicly shamed for immoral conduct. She'd seen what happened to people paraded through the streets. She did not want her head shaved and to be sent to a labor farm. So Sun Qingshan gave in to Wang Lanhua's demands just to protect his precious new woman. But days later, he was back at it, this time asking Grandpa Sun Qingshu to add Wang Chunmiao's son to the family register. Grandpa Sun broke another stick on him and removed Sun Qingshan from the family tree entirely. He seriously suspected his brother was possessed by evil spirits. He couldn't understand why anyone would abandon their own sons to dote on a stranger's child, then expect that child to support him in old age. The man was delusional. Sun Qingshan started using his real sons as free labor for his new household. At first they tolerated it. Then Wang Chunmiao went too far. She started acting like a mother-in-law and demanded the sons' wives come cook and clean for her. The 2 daughters-in-law immediately went to their real mother-in-law and Aunt Chen. What followed was magnificent. Aunt Chen and Wang Lanhua showed up at the house. One held Wang Chunmiao down while the other beat her senseless. They left without a backward glance. Sun Qingshan found his true love, looking like a swollen mess, and went to complain to his brother. Grandpa's son broke yet another stick. The eldest son, seeing how fast the stick supply was depleting, preemptively carved 10 new ones and left them by the door for convenience. Aunt Chen and Wang Lanhua went back and beat Wang Chunmiao again the next day. Sun Qingshan decided to wait until his darling healed before seeking justice again. Grandpa's son waited all evening for his brother to come complain, and was disappointed when he didn't show up. Even Sun Jiamin was bummed. He'd spent 2 nights carefully crafting 5 perfectly smooth, ergonomically designed beating sticks that never got used. Over the years, Wang Chunmiao even had a baby girl with Sun Qingshan. The village gossip burned for half a year over the fact that their new baby was younger than their own grandchildren. Now in his 50s, Sun Qingshan worked like a mule every day to earn points for his new family. Aunt Chen said no work team would dare use their donkey as hard as Sun Qingshan used himself. Even the donkey had it better. When the fishing trip was announced, Sun Qingshan, too old to go to sea, tried to volunteer his sons from his first marriage to go in his place and give him their work points. Grandpa's son chased him around the village with a stick. Everyone gathered to watch with sparkling eyes, like it was their favorite TV show. He tried guilt-tripping his sons directly. The older one almost caved, but the younger one shut it down. Are we supposed to feed that old man's new family? Both refused. Sun Qingshan raged and banged on their locked doors for days before finally accepting a lowly beach-gathering assignment. I told Aunt Chen this could be a hit TV drama. She laughed and drank all my water. She'd been talking nonstop. I refilled her cup with shining eyes, eager for more gossip. She also mentioned Liu Mei was genuinely improving, being kinder to Kong Kong, and focusing on her own household. That was good to hear. After I packed her 4 bowls of double-skin milk pudding and survived another round of gift refusal wrestling, she left. She was heading to Wang Lanhua's house to discuss whether it was time to beat Wang Chunmiao again. Preventive maintenance, she called it. What Wang Chunmiao didn't know, while Aunt Chen was plotting against her, was that she was currently in the mountains, tangled up with yet another man who wasn't her husband. After they finished their little rendezvous, she lay curled up in his arms. What I didn't know at the time was that Wang Chunmiao, Sun Qingshan's true love, was anything but faithful. At 45, she still looked good because Sun Qingshan did absolutely everything for her. Her hands were softer than a 20-year-old's, her face never touched by sun or wind. She was secretly meeting her ex-husband, Tian Chong, in the mountains. He called Sun Qingshan a green-hatted turtle, a cuckold, and asked how his children were doing. Wang Chunmiao cheerfully reported that Sun Qingshan treated the boy like his own son and spoiled the daughter rotten. Tian Chong handed her 100 yuan and said he'd be back next month. She cooed about missing him, they kissed, and then… well, they weren't just talking. The children Sun Qingshan was killing himself to raise weren't even his. Yan Feng and Out Yan had accidentally stumbled onto this scene while out in the mountains. They covered each other's mouths and crept away silently. Once safe, Yan Feng said innocently, "That Sun Qingshan they mentioned is Grandpa's brother." Out Yan was relieved his focus was on that rather than the other stuff. But then Yan Feng asked, why were they kissing? Out Yan stammered something about love. What's love? Out Yan, a single clam with zero romantic experience, proudly sang a little tune I'd once taught him. Love is, you love me, I love you. We're sweet together. Yan Feng went quiet and thoughtful. So if you love me and I love you, you can kiss? Out Yan nodded confidently. Yan Feng fell silent again, thinking hard about something. When they came home, I was preparing supplies for the mother wolf. 10 chickens, 10 ducks, 10 geese from my farm, tied up alive so the wolf family could keep them fresh. I was quite pleased with my thoughtfulness and completely missed the awkward energy radiating from the boy and the clam. Looking at my fat pigs in the space gave me a dinner idea. Braised pork belly. Yan Feng and Out Yan voted yes with all hands and feet. I picked some beautiful 5-flour pork with perfect layers of fat and lean, then walked Yan Feng through the whole cooking process. He couldn't cook a meal to save anyone's life, but his knife skills were magical, every piece cut to identical size. I handled the technique, searing the skin, blanching in cold water, dry frying until golden, making caramel from rock sugar, then braising with soy sauce, beer, star anise, cinnamon, and bay leaves for 40 minutes. While the meat simmered, I steamed rice and smashed some cucumbers as a side dish. At the table, the braised pork was glossy, tender, and melt in your mouth. Nobody spoke. Chopsticks flew toward the meat in a silent competition. The smashed cucumber sat completely ignored until every piece of pork was gone. Only then did they reluctantly acknowledge the vegetables, which were actually perfect for cutting the richness. Afterward, I collapsed in my rocking chair, while Yan Feng cleaned everything up with Out Yin cheering him on from the sideline. I brewed a pot of hawthorn, lotus leaf, and rose tea on my little stove, and the three of us lay side by side in our rocking chairs, enjoying the quiet evening together. The next morning, I gave Yan Feng a storage ring filled with food for the wolf family. I discovered a while back that my storage bags could change shape based on my thoughts. I'd stared at one wishing it were a ring, and it transformed. I could even merge multiple bags together to create bigger storage spaces. I pricked Yanfeng's finger for a blood bonding ritual. The ring disappeared into his skin, and suddenly he could see everything inside using his mind. He was amazed at how huge it was and how much I'd packed: snacks, instant food, flour, noodles, water, medicine, everything. I posed proudly and said, "You're my person. If I have meat, you'll always have soup." His ears turned red. I didn't think much of it, but apparently something was stirring in his head. Something connected to what he'd seen in the mountains yesterday and what Out Yin had told him about love and kissing. Out Yin threw a fit demanding his own ring. Having your own stuff and getting gifts are two different things. Fair point. I handed him one with the same contents. Then I realized I had no idea where to prick him for blood. "Do you even have blood? Should I poke your shell? Will seawater come out?" He rolled his eyes. Sometimes silence suits you better. Then I made a big decision. These two knew about my space, never pried, and I trusted them completely. Before I could even ask, the wisdom merit tree spoke up in my mind for the first time. A child's voice explaining that bringing them in would place a restriction on them. They'd never be able to reveal anything about the space to outsiders. If they ever developed killing intent or malice toward me, the space would automatically destroy them. Otherwise, no restrictions. I asked them if they wanted to come in. Neither hesitated for a second. I grabbed Yanfeng's hand, placed my other hand on Out Yin's shell, and thought, "Enter." The three of us appeared inside my space. Their faces were priceless, like country folk seeing a palace for the first time. Rich black farmland with vegetables, fruits, and herbs. A farm full of animals. Forests, mountains, and a lake in the distance. A paradise. I told them to explore freely and eat whatever they wanted. Yanfeng looked down at me with eyes full of emotion. Then, quickly and lightly, he kissed the corner of my mouth and said, "Auntie, I love you so much." Before I could react, his long legs carried him away at full speed. I stood there, brain completely short-circuited, face slowly turning red. What just happened? Love? I'd never had a relationship in either of my lives. I slapped my own cheeks trying to calm down. I needed to have a serious talk with him later. I looked around frantically. Did Outyen see? Nobody was there except the merit tree. I exhaled in relief. Thank goodness nobody saw that. The merit tree. Outyen had already sprinted to the herb garden. He'd spotted ginseng roots as thick as radishes, bursting with spiritual energy. The whole space had energy levels comparable to the legendary spirit mines from the golden age of cultivation. He lay in the ginseng patch hugging a root thicker than himself, drooling with happiness. Yanfeng ran straight to Batian the wild piglet's territory. Their first meeting at the campsite had been awkward. Yanfeng was upset he didn't get to eat pork. Batian was upset about almost being eaten. They stared at each other. "I know you're Annie's pet pig. I know you're my master's family." I'd used telepathy to explain their relationship and made sure they could understand each other inside the space. Mainly because I was terrified Yanfeng would roast Batian by accident. They warmed up quickly. Batian, riding on the authority of being my pig, dragged Yanfeng into the forest to help intimidate the other animals. "They need to know. Batian is back." Yanfeng scratched his head, thinking this piglet didn't seem very bright. After playing in my space for half the day, I reluctantly called everyone out. Outyen had gotten permission to take 2 ginseng roots bigger than radishes for future, baby clam, cultivation purposes. I didn't mind. I had 2 whole acres of the stuff. Yanfeng bounded over with hunting trophies from the space, looking like a puppy waiting for praise. I tried to act normal and said, "Great job." Then he leaned down and kissed the corner of my mouth again. "I love Annie the most." My brain crashed. My heart was hammering. Then I heard his innocent explanation. "You said you love me. I love you. So we're sweet together." Outyen said that's love. Kissing, hugging, and sleeping together. Just like that, all my confused feelings evaporated. This wasn't romance. This was Outyen's terrible education. "Outyen," I roared. The whole mess traced back to the clam telling Yanfeng that love meant kissing after they'd accidentally witnessed Wang Chunmiao's affair in the mountains. Outyen tried to weasel out with, "It's all a misunderstanding," but I made him confess everything, including the Sun Qingshan Green Hat saga. I was torn between mourning my stolen first kiss and being stunned that Sun Qingshan was being cuckolded to an almost cartoonish degree. I pulled them both back into the space where time moves differently and gave them a crash course on the difference between family love, friendship, and romantic love. What you feel for me is family love, not romance. No more kissing. Understood. Yanfeng puffed his cheeks stubbornly. He didn't see the difference. Both involved hugging and being together. Outyen was also confused. Human emotions were too complicated. I rubbed my forehead. This education project was going to take a while. At the pig shed, I found Xiao Tan completely transformed. No more bruised face, no more moping. He was following Granny Xiao around like a lovesick puppy, watching her with adoring eyes. Granny Xiao looked amazing. Rosy complexion, bright eyes, no trace of her old sadness. She went to get me osmanthus cakes, and Xiao Tan whispered excitedly that they'd made up. He'd purchased an annual dream visit package, so he could be with her every night. But then came the real shock. When Granny Xiao came back, she spoke directly about Xiao Tan. She could see and hear him now. He'd purchased something called a yin-yang meeting service from the underworld. She could see him during the day, too. The couple sat there gazing at each other so sweetly I almost drowned in their romantic energy. Granny Xiao started crying softly. "Without you, I would have had to die before seeing him again. I've been waiting so long, and I was so tired." They both insisted on making me their honorary granddaughter and giving me their family's ancestral treasure, hidden somewhere in the back mountains. I tried to refuse. The spirit money I'd burned for Xiao Tan hadn't cost me much. but they wouldn't budge. Then my space suddenly shook, and a notification rang in my head. Congratulations! 5 million merit points have been deposited. 5 million? Where did that come from? I couldn't check right then, but filed it away. Granny Xiao told me the treasure's location, roughly 1 mountain away from the suspicious underground room the mother wolf had discovered. Since the wolf was still recovering, that expedition would have to wait. Then inspiration struck. I pulled Xiaoten aside and told him about the secret room and the mysterious people who visited every full moon. His expression shifted from calm to confused to furious, then back to calm. I said, "Can you tone down the obvious emotions?" He shot back, "I haven't been human for decades. Who am I keeping a straight face for? Ghosts." I had no comeback for that. The first thing I did when I got home was check my space. The wisdom merit tree had grown bigger, with beautiful gold-edged green leaves. I tried interrogating it about the 5 million merit points. "What does 5 million merit mean?" Silence. "Why aren't you talking?" Silence. "I know you're home. Can you please stop being so noisy?" The tree grudgingly explained that doing good deeds earns merit, and when merit reaches certain levels, there'll be surprises. Then it went back to sleep.
Typical.
I sat under the tree and pieced things together. I'd gotten 0 merit from helping Yanfeng all this time, but 5 million from helping Xiao Tan. The difference was that Xiao Tan and Granny Zhao's deepest heart knot had been truly resolved. Decades of grief and longing, genuinely healed. Surface help doesn't count. You have to solve someone's real problem and receive their heartfelt gratitude. So what was Yanfeng's true heart knot? Probably something connected to before he lost his memory, the bullet in his brain, the person who tried to kill him. Until he remembers, his deepest wish can't be fulfilled. I wasn't sure whether to feel happy or sad about that. Then suddenly, 10,000 merit points deposited. What? I hadn't done anything. I called for the tree repeatedly. Dead silence. Fine, free money is free money. What I didn't know was that in Beijing, my brother Su Yunqi was lying unconscious in a hospital bed, barely alive. Jiang Xing was standing over him. Apparently the ginseng-eyed, carelessly tossed into a package, had indirectly saved my brother's life. The hospital director, a medicine fanatic, had nearly lost his mind over the ginseng's quality. He said its medicinal value was extraordinary. It could make healing pills that would save critically wounded soldiers from having to leave the military. This was something that could benefit the whole nation. Jiang Xing stood in a dark stairwell holding an unsmoked cigarette, watching it burn down to nothing, his expression unreadable. That night the hospital director smuggled half the ginseng root home tucked inside his coat, looking around suspiciously like a thief. By 4 o'clock, Yanfeng and Out Yin still weren't home. I started making 4 happiness meatballs, a dish I'd loved since the orphanage days. I hand-cut the pork into tiny pieces instead of grinding it for better texture, added water chestnuts for crunch, egg, 5-spice, and soaked bread for softness. I was halfway through frying when I realized I could have done all of this with my mind inside the space. My brain really is useless sometimes. I moved everything into the space and finished with mental commands, fried the meatballs, braised them for 40 minutes in spice sauce, made steamed eggplant with garlic, rice, and sliced up some previously prepared braised pig intestines, trotters, and lung with dipping sauce. Yanfeng and Out Yin came back around 7 and demolished everything at inhuman speed. They reported that the mother wolf was healing well and the whole family was doing fine. Then they went home to sleep. I felt so proud watching my boy handle long mountain trips independently now. Though apparently the trip back involved a directional argument, Out Yin, with a clam's natural compass, said go left, while Yanfeng stubbornly insisted on going right. Apparently on the way home, Out Yin had gotten so frustrated with Yanfeng ignoring his directions that he had sulking in the backpack. Then he secretly noticed Yanfeng actually took his suggested route after all. But Yanfeng was unusually quiet the whole way, answering everything with just got it, or okay. Out Yin spent ages trying to cheer him up, thinking he was angry. Being a land-dwelling clam is truly exhausting. Before I knew it, fishing day arrived. Mid-November mornings were freezing. I packed supplies for Yanfeng in his backpack, hidden so He could access things from the storage ring without anyone noticing. At the beach, Aunt Chin proudly showed me the village's 3 motorized fishing boats, a reward from the commune for being the best production team. Most fishing villages only had 2, plus we also had a tractor. She explained the boats ran on diesel with pull-start motors. They'd be gone 5 or 6 days, heading far out. They'd gut and salt the mackerel right on the boat, and buy ice blocks from the commune's ice factory to keep the premium fish fresh. The small crabs and scraps? Those were meant to rot. They'd become fertilizer. When the boats pulled away, Yanfeng stood on deck, towering above everyone, waving frantically and shouting, "Auntie, wait for me to come back." I waved back, feeling a strange emptiness. We'd never been apart this long since I arrived. Day 1 without Yanfeng. I missed him already. Time to stay busy. The village was on rest day, but pigs still needed feeding. I packed some candy and apples and headed up the mountain. On the path, I found a skeletal girl collapsed in the grass, barely conscious. She whispered one word, "Hungry." My gut told me she was a good person. I pulled out some big buns from my space behind my backpack and gave them to her. She ate ravenously, tears she couldn't cry forming in her dry eyes. Her name was Wu Xiaohua. She said she'd repay me someday. I left her a water bottle mixed with spirit spring water and moved on. At the pig grass area, Arya, little Huzi, and a kid named Gooden were thrilled to see me. I was about to pat their heads when I noticed Arya's hair was jumping with fleas. I pulled my hand back.
Arya looked hurt.
Gooden cheerfully explained, "My mom says all country people have fleas. Only city folks don't," little Huzi added proudly. "I can tell who's from the city just by checking for fleas. You're definitely a city person, right?" I decided these kids, my loyal founding members, deserve some benefits. After finishing the pig grass work, I asked if they'd come home with me to get defleed. Gooden declined. My family's fleas could fill several plates of stir-fry. Little Huzi refused to. Fleas are a mark of manhood. I tried very hard not to picture flea stir-fry. Only Arya came with me. At home, a mailman was waiting with letters from Xiang Tian and Jiang Xing, plus more packages at the commune to pick up. I heated water, took Arya to the shower, and ordered anti-flea shampoo and a special comb from Pinduoduo. Her hair was thin, brittle, and yellow, severe malnutrition. While I washed her hair, she stared up at me with such longing. She told me this was the first time she'd felt a mother's love. Her own mother ignored her. Her father only cared about her younger brother and did whatever Grandma said. I sighed. I couldn't fix her family, but I could at least make her physically comfortable. When I gave her the shampoo and comb to take home, she refused. "If my grandma or dad see these, they'll take them and beat me." Then she held out a tiny handful of coins. "This is all I've saved, 1 mao and 2 fun. I know it's not enough, but please take it for now." Arya pulled off her shoe and somehow fished out a tiny roll of coins she'd been hiding, 1 mao and 2 fun, all her savings. My heart ached so badly, I felt like I was drowning. I couldn't take a child's money, but I didn't want to hurt her pride either. "How about this? You help me with pig grass for 5 days, and the shampoo is yours. Deal?" She hesitated, then insisted on 10 days. This kid had real character. We agreed and stopped arguing. After she left, I read my letters. Jiang Xing's was surprisingly long for once. He wrote that the big radish, my ginseng, had saved someone very important. The remaining half went to the director of Beijing's First People's Hospital, who would use it to make special medicine for wounded soldiers who'd otherwise have to leave the military. He also sent me another 1,000 yuan and told me to buy whatever I wanted to eat. I suddenly connected the dots. That mysterious 10,000 merit points that appeared out of nowhere, it must have come from the ginseng saving that important person. Whoever it was must carry great merit themselves. Xiang Tian's letter was more normal. He thanked me for the snacks, apologized for the late reply due to military duties, and said he'd mailed me more supplies. The constant back-and-forth gift exchange was starting to feel awkward. I'm not someone who likes owing people, but I couldn't keep refusing either. I went into my space to prepare more packages, and whack. The merit tree knocked me unconscious with another knowledge transfer. When I woke up, there was a powerful hemostatic medicine formula lodged in my brain. Did you just force-feed me knowledge again? I asked, rubbing my head. Can't help it. You're just too smart, the tree said sarcastically. It was still bitter about last time when it had exhausted itself giving me comprehensive pig-raising knowledge, and all I'd retained was half-baked postpartum care that I hadn't even needed yet. This recipe was simpler, just measure herbs, grind to powder, mix. But I was worried about exposure. What if someone traced the medicine back to me? What if authorities demanded the formula and noticed their version didn't work as well? The tree reassured me that the mountain's residual spiritual energy naturally enhanced local herbs, giving me plausible cover. It also confirmed Xiang Tian was a genuinely good person and offered to vet anyone I was unsure about in the future. Then it mentioned having other places to be and disappeared. I wrote out the formula, gathered herbs from my medicinal garden, ground everything with mental power, and filled 20 small porcelain bottles. I also prepared milk powder, milk tablets, and dried poultry for the care packages. I decided to wait for Yanfeng's fishing fleet to return before mailing everything. I could add smoked fish and dried shrimp from their haul. Lying in bed that night, I wondered how Yanfeng was doing. Was Outyan hidden properly? Had they eaten? What I didn't know was that my boy and Outyan had snuck into the ocean while everyone else slept. Outyan happily led the way, flapping his shell through the water. They found a school of large yellow croaker and harvested the big ones, leaving the small fish and egg-carrying mothers behind, everything stored in the ring-eyed.
Given them.
Outyan said cheerfully. The girl will be so happy seeing all this fish. Yanfeng nodded silently, his expression distant and cold, nothing like his usual self. Outyan had gotten used to these occasional shifts. He figured it was like what he'd read in my novels. Men just have their moody days sometimes. What I didn't know was that during the fishing trip, something was tearing Yanfeng apart inside. A voice in his head, the original personality, the real Ji Yanfeng, had been taking over his body at night. The original told him the truth. Yanfeng, as I knew him, was just a second personality created when the real Yanfeng's brain was damaged. A protection mechanism. A side effect. A disease. Will I disappear? My Yanfeng asked, clutching the bedsheets. The original couldn't promise anything. He had unfinished missions and needed his body back. He couldn't guarantee the second personality would survive. My poor boy's beautiful eyes went completely dead. Everything he thought was his body, his identity, belonged to someone else. The only things truly his were my love and Outyan's friendship, and soon even those might be taken away. He had nothing that was really his own. He missed me. He wondered if I missed him too. Meanwhile, I spent the day hiking 3 hours into the mountains to find the place the merit tree had described. While everything else was brown and withered in late autumn, this area was lush and green with birdsong. I found incredible medicinal herbs growing far better than anywhere else, plus a huge patch of wild ginseng, even older than what I had in my space. I shamelessly dug up one ginseng root, but left the rest for the country. Then I reminded myself I already had acres of the stuff and walked away, reluctantly. Then I spotted what I thought were giant mutant mushrooms on a dead tree trunk. Up close, they were lingji, magical medicinal mushrooms, covering the entire tree, each one the size of a wash basin, deep purple-black with a copper sheen in the sunlight. There were so many they almost triggered my trypophobia, but greed cured that instantly. I grabbed the biggest one for Jiangxing, cut off a branch covered in baby lingji for my space to grow, and forced myself to leave the rest for the nation's soldiers. After that mental breakthrough, I calmly explored and collected samples of everything, 2 of each rare herb, 1 for Jiangxing, 1 for my space. I got so absorbed that night fell. I camped inside my space, planted everything I'd found, processed the herbs using the techniques I'd just learned, and collapsed from exhaustion. My feet were covered in blisters I hadn't even noticed in my excitement. That night I had a strange dream. Yifan appeared, crying miserably, telling me he'd lost all the money I'd given him. He'd been hit by a romance scam, the underworld version of a honey trap plus marriage fraud, backed by someone powerful he couldn't fight. He'd been sobbing in my dream since the middle of the night. I woke up with a headache. So scams were just as popular in the underworld as in the living world. I tried contacting Yifan with the communication stone, no response. Don't tell me they took that too? I laughed in disbelief. No wonder he'd resorted to dream crying at me. Looks like I'd need to make another beach trip tonight. I dragged myself home by early afternoon, ate something, showered, and collapsed into my yard chair to stare at the sun through my fingers. Zhang Zhaodi was apparently plotting something new against me, but I didn't know that yet. Some people just never learn. Tomorrow Yanfeng and Outyan would be back, so I planned a big welcome home feast and some desserts they'd fight over. That night, I went to the beach for the third time to burn spirit offerings for Yifan. As the flames consumed everything, I could sense Yifan sobbing with relief in the underworld. My reliable little sister saves the day again. When he appeared, he was a complete mess. Ripped shirt, mismatched pant legs, nothing like the elegant ghost I'd first met. Before I could say anything, he bear-hugged me and sobbed all over my clothes, leaving snot and tears on my shoulder. Xiao Tan materialized nearby, grinning. All those years in the underworld, and you're still this gullible? Growing older but not smarter, Yifan sniffled and explained. He'd wanted a simple, genuine romance. He deliberately hid the fact that he was the king of Hell's right-hand man so he could find someone who loved him for himself. He planned to reveal his status after the wedding as a surprise. Instead, he walked straight into a honey trap and marriage scam. The scammer had powerful connections in the underworld, so he couldn't even fight back. He lost everything. Every cent I'd given him. Xiao Tan was howling with laughter. He told me Yifan had been squatting outside his underworld mansion for days, completely broke, and even had to borrow money from him just to send me that dream. Xiao Tan was slapping Yifan's shoulder between gasps of laughter. Next time. Ha ha ha. Open your eyes. I tried so hard not to laugh that my face turned red, but Xiao Tan's cackling was contagious. The two of us were doubled over while Yifan stood there looking pitiful. Eventually even he started laughing. That night, the three of us became true friends. Before leaving, Yifan promised that if I ever needed anything, he'd handle it, and if he couldn't, he'd go cry at the King of Hell's feet until it got done. I happily agreed. I didn't know yet that I'd actually need that favor someday, and Yifan would indeed throw a full tantrum until the King of Hell gave
In.
I woke at 5 the next morning and steamed a huge pot of cabbage pork buns, Yanfeng's favorite, made hot soy milk, and heated water for baths. I packed some buns in a basket and practically ran to the beach. The shore was packed with over 1,000 people. I tried jumping to spot Yanfeng, but at 5'3", I was completely swallowed by the crowd of large village women. First I got squished into one Annie's armpit. The smell nearly made me lose breakfast. Then I got shoved face first into another woman's chest. No bad smell this time, just very soft, but I was suffocating. Right as I was rolling my eyes from oxygen deprivation, a strong hand grabbed my arm and yanked me free. I gasped for air like a drowning person. It was Yanfeng, looking down at me with concern. Up close, he was even more handsome than I remembered, tanned and lean from 5 days at sea. "You're thinner and darker," I said, jumping up to pat his shoulders. "And you're whiter and fatter," he replied, examining me. "You can't call a girl fat. You say she looks slim. Okay, you're as slim as that flagpole over there. Way too thin." Outyan snickered from inside the backpack. I shoved warm buns at Yanfeng, who secretly passed one into the backpack for Outyan. They both ate with pure contentment. "Auntie is the best," Yanfeng said through a mouthful, his eyes overflowing with tenderness that I, being completely oblivious, didn't notice. The boats had brought in a huge haul. People were beaming as they unloaded. The small boat catches went into baskets to be carted off for fertilizer. It looked like a great harvest. The big boat's catches were packed in ice for the commune to exchange for work points. I stood watching the unloading and nearly had a heart attack. Massive crabs, sea cucumbers, golden and silver pomfret, huge prawns and mantis shrimp, all being tossed into the fertilizer pile. "Are you okay?" Yanfeng asked, alarmed by my pained expression. "I'm fine. I just can't bear watching all that seafood go to waste." "Why not eat it?" Anshin overheard and laughed. She explained that crabs were so common you could grab them just walking on the beach. Small fish had too little meat to bother with. Sea cucumbers were everywhere. They only kept the biggest, oldest ones. This stretch of ocean was so rich in marine life that people were genuinely picky. Without modern overfishing or nuclear wastewater contamination, the seafood here was beyond anything I could have imagined in my past life. I drooled with envy. I took the yawning Yanfeng home. 5 days at sea had worn him out. He went straight to the bath. There'd been no freshwater showers on the boat. Then Yen dumped everything from the storage ring and stunned me speechless. Mountains of seafood. He scrambled to his wardrobe nest, pulled up his tiny blanket, mumbled, "These are all for you. Eat however you want, good night," and was snoring. Within seconds. I had no idea that Yen had been working double shifts, fishing with Yanfeng during the day, then being dragged on underwater marathons at night. Even dog walkers didn't push this hard. Yanfeng stepped out of the bathroom, and I was not prepared. Shirtless, toweling his wet hair, sunlight streaming over defined pecs, clearly visible 8-pack abs, water droplets tracing down that V-line into the waistband of his loose black pants. Combined with that unfairly gorgeous face. For words filled my brain. Absolutely devourable. My face went crimson. I secretly swallowed. "Auntie, you're blushing," he reached out and pinched my cheek. I swatted his hand away. "I'm just hot." "It's the heat." He glanced pointedly at the frost-covered vegetables in the yard. "In November." He pressed his lips together. He wasn't buying it. He knew exactly why I was flustered, even if he didn't say it. I shoved him toward bed and fled. Back home, I threw myself onto the bed and rolled around in my blankets in distress. I was corrupted. I developed feelings for my own son. He only saw me as family. Meanwhile, I was over here having inappropriate thoughts about a mentally impaired young man. I must control myself, I declared to the ceiling, then buried my face in shame. To distract myself, I opened the storage ring properly. I was blown away. Wild large yellow croaker, my favorite fish, the kind that costs over 1,000 yuan in the modern era and is nearly impossible to buy. And big pomfret, giant prawns, each one nearly a pound. Red sea bream, which even in the 1960s wasn't cheap. Then I found the real treasure. Over a dozen black gold abalone. These required professional deep-sea divers to harvest and were worth a fortune. My hands were shaking with excitement. For tonight's dinner, only the simplest preparation would do justice to ingredients this premium. I sliced the abalone in my space using mental control, steamed it, laid scallion threads on top, drizzled sauce, then poured sizzling hot oil over everything to release the fragrance. One taste, silky, tender, with layers of delicate flavor. Incredible. Tonight's feast was going to be spectacular.